emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon, happy Easter. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Oh, could have picked a better shot. But next, going head-to-head in a clash of minds as a member of Reform UK and former MEP Ben Habib, and also former Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 3. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. That's the warning from NHS National Medical Director, Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned as hospitals face nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman Bischoff motorhome, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time that police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband, Peter Murrell. The leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, Douglas Ross, told us people need answers.
It's now been going on for, I think, 18 months, almost 2 years. It's been an extensive inquiry, and we saw that Peter Murrell was interviewed for almost the maximum 12 hours, released without charge, but pending further investigation, and a significant amount of evidence taken away from both their home and SNP headquarters. So I think people want answers, and those answers have to come from Nicola Sturgeon, from Humza Yousaf, and those at the top of the SNP.
The mother of Olivia Pratt-Corbell has told the Sunday Mirror that the law should be changed to force all criminals to attend their sentencing. Cheryl Corbell has spoken out after her daughter's killer refused to appear in the dock as he was jailed for a minimum of 42 years. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab says he is planning to change the law. A new survey suggests that more than 1 in 10 teachers have been physically assaulted by a pupil in the last year. The Teachers' Union says they've been kicked, bitten and punched by pupils, whilst more than 1 in 4 have faced verbal abuse from a parent or carer. The findings have been released during the union's annual conference in Glasgow. Delegates are voting on a motion which suggests assaults are now seen as a normal part of teaching in too many schools. The government is expected to crack down on the illegal sale of e-cigarettes to children with a new illicit vapes enforcement squad. The Department of Health and Social Care says task forces will carry out test purchasing at shops. It will also share intelligence with local authorities. The squads will have the power to remove illegal products from shops and at borders. Thousands of expectant mothers are set to receive a maternity allowance boost of 10.1%. The increase will see payments go up by £15 and 82 pence a week. That equates to around £617 over the 39-week period that it could be claimed. The Department for Work and Pensions says the automatic increase is going to benefit around 40,000 parents this year. Up to 10 people are believed to be trapped under the rubble after 2 residential buildings collapsed in Marseille. France's Interior Minister says an explosion caused the incident. That sparked a fire which complicated rescue efforts. 5 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Residents of 30 other buildings have also been evacuated. President Emmanuel Macron tweeted that his thoughts are with Marseille. Well, China's military has carried out simulated precision strikes on Taiwan, the country's state media broadcaster says. CCTV says forces continue to encircle the island as part of 3 days of drills focused on the disputed territory. Forces have reportedly been targeting key targets on land and in surrounding waters. Taiwan's defence ministry has also reported multiple Air Force sorties. The King, Queen Consort and other senior royals have attended an Easter church service at Windsor Castle. It was held at St George's Chapel and was the first of Charles's reign. The occasion falls on the 2nd anniversary of Prince Philip's death. Both he and the late Queen are interred in the grounds of the 15th century chapel. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and before we get stuck into the debate over the next hour, let me introduce you to my panel. Going head-to-head for the next hour is member of Reform UK and former MEP Ben Habib, and also former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. Now, here's what else is coming up today. Home Office data reveals that just 215 Channel migrants were removed or deported last year. Now, that equates to less than 5 in every 1,000 migrants. I mean, why are we bothering? It comes after the government announced adult male migrants will be housed in a barge off Dorset coast in a bid to decrease the costs of the housing of these migrants in hotels. So are the government doing enough to tackle this issue, or should we just give up on trying to tackle the crisis and just let them all in? Then I'll be asking whether Labour's VAT raid on private schools is punishing students out of the private sector and risking shifting them into state education. Seems a bit unfair. A new survey revealed that up to 60% of parents would have to withdraw their child from private schools if 20% VAT was added to their current school fees. Then, following the controversies surrounding the Labour tweets attacking Rishi Sunak, implying that he doesn't want to lock up child sex offenders, which is absolutely ludicrous because, of course, he does. Everybody does. It appears that it's divided parts of the Labour Party, with reports members of the Shadow Cabinet, such as Yvette Cooper, were frustrated that they weren't consulted about these adverts. Nothing new there. They're always divided. So are Labour punching below the belt? And more, And more women are starting to boycott Nike after the company sponsored trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney. And that's me included. I've had enough. I don't want to see a man who has got a biological male body advertising female sports bras. It's ludicrous. So Caitlyn Jenner has got involved in the conversation as well and hit out at how woke Nike has become. Do you agree with her? That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, so let's kick this off with the first discussion. Home Office data reveals that just 215 channel migrants were removed or deported last year. That's 215, not 250, 215. There's no more zeros after it. Now, that equates to less than 5 in every 1,000 migrants. I mean, it's ludicrous. And that comes after the government announced 500 male adult migrants will be housed in a barge off the Dorset coast. So that's literally one day's worth of migrants coming in in a bid to decrease the cost of housing them in hotels. So will that be enough to deter people from crossing the channel? What do you think? Do we need to deport more migrants or should we just let them all in? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by Reform UK and former MEP Ben Habib, also former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. Dennis, I'm going to start with you. Dennis, should we let them all in?
Oh, don't be silly. I mean...
well, I thought you'd say yes, we should.
No, well, I suppose...
I was expecting it, Dennis.
Let my grandmother in from Ireland, that might have been a mistake. Let my father in from Poland as a Polish army officer to come and fight for Britain in 1940. He was grateful to that. Though, interestingly, immediately after the war, the Labour Foreign Secretary, a man called Ernest Bevin, wrote on Foreign Office letterhead, he was a Foreign Secretary, to 200,000 Polish soldiers and their families in Poland, go home. You're not wanted here anymore. This is in 1947 when the communists were taking over. So, frankly, Britain has always got incredibly twitchy about foreigners coming in. The first Aliens Act was passed in 1902 to keep out Jews from Russia, and so on and so on and so on. Look, you put a comedian in charge of the Foreign Office, you're all giggling at what she produces. Of course you can't have somebody as unserious as Suella Braverman.
She's not in charge of the Foreign Office. She's the Home Secretary.
The Home Office. She's in charge of immigration. She's Easter Sunday. She's in charge of immigration. And since she and Priti Patel, since they've been in charge, these two lovely ladies, we've got the longest queues. We've broken all possibilities of a relationship with Europe to send them back. We're not doing proper patrols. We're not sorting out the fundamental problem, which is they all come, once they're here, the Home Office won't invest in processing them. Other countries do. Look, we take about a quarter of what France takes, about a third of what Spain takes, about a sixth of what Germany takes. And all those countries, I was in Italy last week, they're tearing their hair out as well. It's not just us.
They've got themselves to blame, Dennis, haven't they? Because the minute you cross into Greece, there's freedom of movement. And you can go right across Europe, including, of course, going to French beaches and then making their way to the United Kingdom. But let's just get to the point. Yeah. The entire British government response to the boats, stopping the boats, is through deportation and deterrence. That's what they said. And let's just examine how that's going. So if you're someone wishing to get to the UK, you get in one of these dinghies, you make it to British territorial water, you get a free ride on Border Force or RNLI.
They'll come and get you.
They come and get you to bring you safely into port. You're then interviewed, taken to a 4-star hotel, given free food, given free NHS treatment, dental care, some cash, and less than 0.4% get deported.
Any luncheon vouchers?
They don't need vouchers.
They don't need vouchers. They get...
And they get the money anyway, they get the food.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ben. Now, Ben's
I haven't finished. I haven't finished. So there is no deterrent. There is no deportation. The whole government response is fundamentally flawed. What border control means is border control. You have to stop people coming into your country in the first place. The reason Europe has such a big problem is because of freedom of movement, because they've got no border control. People like Dennis champion the EU, but it's an absolutely daft setup that people can just march right across Europe unchecked.
Let you into a little secret. They arrive in countries called Spain, Greece, Italy. Believe me, there are borders there, but when they pitch up in rather bigger boats, sometimes smaller boats, what are you going to do? Sink them? What are you going to do? Starve them out? shoot them down? Tell me.
Well, we have a very clear right under the UN Convention for Laws at the Sea to stop boats as they seek to enter British waters if they're seeking to enter illegally.
OK.
And we can require them to turn round and make the journey that they've already just made willingly and without compulsion to the point of our territorial water.
But Ben, sorry, I thought we were talking about all the immigrants or refugees arriving in Europe. He's moved up north to the Straits of Dover.
Well,
wait, may I?
Can I just stop? Yeah, can you carry on with what he's saying?
Yeah, Ben, I mean, the Straits of Dover are not divided into two sets of territorial waters.
They are.
They're not.
They are. There's a point.
Case,
there's a point between British territorial waters and French territorial waters. Absolutely they are, Dennis.
Well, I thought they were. Are they not? You don't have French territorial waters?
No, they go out for 20 miles. You go out 20 miles from France, you arrive probably for a McDonald's in Dover.
No, Dennis, you've got your law back to front.
The point is, all right, if you really believe that, you're not going to get the Royal Navy going out and machine gunning little canoes.
But nobody said that. No, nobody's saying that you machine gun little canoes. Nobody's talking about killing people before they come here. I mean, that's got nothing to do with it. What the discussion is that shall we just let them all in because we aren't even sending any of them back?
No, that's
so much processing.
Okay.
So let's get back.
Right, let's go back first to the main source of all this immigration. It is 4 giant failed states: Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. We're partly responsible.
Albania.
And Albania is. Let's be quite serious. Albanians come here. Some come for criminal reasons. Most come because there are lots of Albanians playing in Premier League football here. They have family connections, and they get very low-paid jobs in car washes.
Do you know they've taken over the drug trade in the United Kingdom? Basically, the drug trade is run by Albanians.
When I was young, it was the Maltese. Then it was the Vietnamese.
Yeah, OK. But
foreign criminals often control mafia drugs.
Yeah, OK. But we have to acknowledge that we do have a problem specifically created by our own immigration procedures. And I don't think... Because at the beginning, you actually blamed Suella Braverman and also Priti Patel.
Yes.
Hang on. I don't think you can. Because remember the Home Office is run by a load of civil servants who are very, very objectionable towards Priti Patel, and they've been and they are the ones processing this. So why is it taking them so long? Why are they only processing? Is it 9,000?
Let me assure you, I was a minister. If you give a clear order, it will be carried out.
These ones didn't agree with some of the orders. She decided not to do them.
Doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not.
No, that's right. They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Your job as a civil servant, and I worked with Foreign Office people who probably didn't agree with all foreign policy positions across a range of things. The Prime Minister orders, Foreign Secretary orders, even little me suggests, and it gets done.
No,
but Suella Braverman's point is that she's hampered by the fact we won't cooperate with anybody. She's hampered by the fact that...
What do you mean won't cooperate? We're just paying the French £500 million to do what they're obliged to do, which is control their own borders.
One country where we have secured a good cooperation agreement is indeed Albania. They will take Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of Albania, a friend of mine. He was here 2 or 3 weeks ago with Rishi Sunak. No question. I heard him at Chatham House. He utterly deplores any criminal activity.
He's not likely to champion it, is he, Dennis?
Well, you keep insulting the Albanians.
I'm just insulting the Albanians.
Nobody's insulting the Albanians. Nobody's insulting anybody.
Well, he was very upset at the branding, certainly not by Ben or myself or you, Nana, in much of our press of the Albanians in language that was used about 2 minutes ago. It doesn't matter. He is ready to take them all back.
That's good of him. That's good of him, but they shouldn't be coming. They're not under persecution. There's nothing wrong with Albania.
The point here is not the civil service. The point here is not Suella Braverman or Priti Patel or the Nationality and Borders Bill or indeed the illegal migration bill that's going through Parliament at the moment. The point here is that the British government has got a fundamental failure in its policy approach to dealing with the boats coming from France. It's just you cannot deal with it through deportation.
So finally, Dennis, so should we just let them all in then? Seeing as
certainly not.
Certainly not.
Well, I would have a specialised. We've got. Dennis is going to rise up in arms against me, but we've got an invasion of people coming from France across the Channel into the United Kingdom. 45,000 last year, 80,000 this year, and we need a specialised force developed to respond particularly to these small boats, trained in stopping them and requiring them to go back and making sure that they don't come into harm as a result of that policy.
Ben, you can't do that unless the French will take them back. What are you going to do?
No, you stop them and you require them to at the point of our territorial waters. Let me just define territorial waters before we have that debate again.
You're wrong.
Territorial waters.
Do you think the Royal Navy is on top of this? And they say
the Royal Navy.
All right, we're not going to dump on the Royal Navy.
No, I'm not having a dump at the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy are not specifically set up and trained to stop dinghies coming in from France. We need a specialised force.
You just called it an invasion.
It is an invasion.
You're calling it an invasion.
It is an invasion.
Well, that's what the Royal Navy's always existed for, to stop invasions. So
not with dinghies. Well,
you're not serious. This is the point.
I'm utterly serious. Border control is about stopping people from entering the country. It is not about deporting them.
Actually,
deportation is what you use when you fail.
That was a problem with Switzerland in the 1930s. They turned every Jew back. And after the war, we passed lots and lots of laws and conventions. Winston Churchill led the charge to say if somebody comes and actually has to only issue the word asylum, maybe we need to rewrite these laws. It's that well-grounded fear of oppression.
We keep rewriting the laws.
We keep rewriting the laws, and then some sort of weird woke mindset stops every single law. And
Winston Churchill was woke.
Everything we create. I didn't say Churchill was woke. You've just said that. I've not finished what I'm saying. It seems that everything we create is stopped by some litigious system that doesn't enable us to do anything, which is unfortunate. But let's move on. Well, anyway, ultimately, I mean, what do you think? Do you think we should just accept them, seeing as we accept 95% of them? We are spending a fortune in these hotels and barges and all other concepts that are coming up. And in the end, we always say, OK, you can come in. So why bother? What do you think? You can get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at GBNews. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, Labour wants to impose VAT on private school fees. But could this have a detrimental effect on state education? We'll discuss that next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 24 minutes after 3 o'clock. Happy Easter. What do you think I've come as? An Easter egg. Sorry, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. We're live. Nobody laughed. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was funny. Thank you. It's canned laughter now. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Right, so a new survey has revealed the possible impact of Sir Keir Starmer's proposed tax raid on private schools. Now, the Labour leader wants to impose 20% VAT on private school fees, but the survey has found up to 60% of parents would withdraw their child from private school if the plans went ahead, which would shift many of those pupils into state education, which seems a bit stupid, really. The Labour Party didn't think that that might happen, and the money that they think they're going to get wouldn't be the amount. So do Labour's plans threaten the future of education? Let's see what my panel make of that. Joining me is a member of Reform UK and former MEP Ben Habib, also former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. So, Ben, the Labour Party are thinking that if they stick 20% the VAT onto these school fees, they've added it all up, plus the numbers, worked it out with the numbers of people who are currently paying private education, plus this extra 20%, and they've come out with a figure that they think is going to solve the problem.
Yeah, and the idea is, of course, that they're going to take that money and put it into the state sector. But, you know, this is completely the politics of envy. It's typical Labour. It's a hark back, actually, to the 1970s. And I hope Dennis will concur with me that what you don't do is damage something that works extremely well, which is a pride of the nation, which is recognised globally as a fantastic education system. You don't damage that in order to try to bring up state education. What they need to focus on is improving state education and allow that which is working incredibly well to continue to work incredibly well. It's daft politics. It's, as I say, the politics of envy. It'll last for 5 minutes. It won't add up. And, of course, they'll lose revenue as a result. The more you tax something, the less tax you raise. And this is typical bad Labour policy, and Dennis must not excuse it.
Dennis, what do you think? Because... hang on. When I'm speaking, let me finish, then you can come in.
Sorry, Mum.
Thank you. Right, so, Dennis, what do you think about that? That's all I was going to say.
I, first of all, want to agree with Ben about some of the disastrous wrong turnings of education in the 1970s when Margaret Thatcher was Education Secretary, and she forced so many good schools to become bad comprehensives. I mean, she really lost the plot. She was the Suella Braverman of her time. She became a great
Suella's a great lady. I'm not having all this denigrating of Suella.
She might become a great lady. Maybe like Mrs Thatcher, she'll become a great Prime Minister, but she's a dreadful Home Secretary. Anyway, to flash forward to today, I was astonished to learn that all the oligarchs from Russia, China, everywhere around the world, sending their children to Eton and Winchester, just to name the 2 schools the current and the last but one Prime Minister went to, get an amazing tax break. My children didn't get that.
What tax break is this?
Sorry? They get a 20% lift off the cost of the school.
But Dennis,
and my children didn't have that.
They're not being educated.
I had to pay higher taxes, I assume, for them to go to very good state schools, very happy with them. And I really think we need to move away from the snobbery that's hostile to state schools.
Well, hold on. First of all, if that's the case, then perhaps the Labour Party should take that advice, because that is sheer snobbery, that they're thinking that they're going to add more the VAT into these schools. Now, I went to one of those private schools. I actually went to a comprehensive, first of all, state school. Then my parents moved abroad, so I ended up in one of those private schools. And it was wonderful, and it really shifted the way I was educated. But I got an opportunity to do that. Had I stayed in a state school, I wouldn't be probably doing this at all.
And when you went to the private school, Nana, when you went to the private, a burden was taken off the state school. And that's the argument you don't recognise, Dennis.
Well, actually, knowing you, and I've got to know you a little bit over recent months, I think you'd have been a star.
Well, you say that, but actually...
what school you're at? William Hague was at a state comprehensive school. He did very well.
He's a Remainer.
I've met up with some of my friends who went to that school, and they think I'm really clever. When I said how many O-levels I had None of those, even in the higher sets that I'd been in with them, had got the A-levels. They all had CSEs. Their grades weren't as good as mine, yet these were the clever kids. And the only thing that changed with that is that I went and was moved to a private school.
Well, now, again, I mean, I'm not defending anything particularly. I'd like to know who brought in the 20% VAT break. I mean, you know, most services, if bed...
well, I don't think it's ever been subject to VAT.
It's charitable status.
Education's never been subject... You know, well, certainly the schools to which you referred, Eton, Winchester, Rugby, Harrow and all the rest, you know, they are charitable status. And other private schools are not obliged, I think, to levy... VAT on fees, and nor should they be. Well, they're actually taking a burden off the state, Dennis. They're providing a good service.
Normally, when you pay for your accountant, you pay for any service, you get 20%, you get VAT added. Now, this is just simply saying that they're making money out of it. They're profitable outfits, so maybe non-profit big. They haven't got shareholders. But, you know, the teachers...
Labour will destroy something that this country operates incredibly well. That's what this policy would do.
Well, there's one person, our beloved Easter bunny, Nana, Kate, got out of her...
Easter egg, sorry.
Out of her school and went up after she went to a private school. I mean, I'm delighted for her. But the implication seems to be that everybody in the state school, without adequate resources, look at the teachers screaming to have decent pay, should be left behind so that one person can go up.
They pay quite well, actually. I don't think that's quite true, Dennis.
You don't level up the educational system, or you don't beneficially level up the educational system by dragging private schools down.
Nobody's dragging them down.
Well, that's exactly what would happen if 60% of parents can't afford them.
Hey, can we just pause one tiny second? This is not some independent Ipsos Mori poll. This is the lobbying outfit paid very handsomely by the private schools to mount a lobbying organisation.
No, Dennis.
It is.
No.
It's Independent Schools Council, but they've... It's like me going round the Labour Party and saying I'm having an independent survey who should be the next Prime Minister.
So hang on.
Guess what the result
So sometimes it's funny, though, that we choose which statistics we're going to accept. This is a survey that was done. If we take it on face value, a lot of those parents won't be able to afford it. That's what they're saying. And I'd be inclined to believe that, because those schools are quite expensive. And an additional 20% is a fifth on top, which is a lot. And a lot of those parents are not... wealthy parents.
Oh, no, I agree with that.
A lot of them are middle-income parents who've decided to sacrifice things so that their kids will get a good education, because a good education can make a lot of difference. And why should they be being punished for it?
They're not. Look, it's not a question of punishment.
They are. No, extra 20%. What for?
Because it's a service that you buy, and normally you are required to pay
Dennis,
VAT on it. But if I just finish for a second...
You're not, because it's charitable status.
Pupils who go to state schools don't pay a penny. So why would you punish people who are actually paying fees for their children?
They're paying
twice. You pay fees and then pay taxes on top. It makes no sense.
No, you're not punishing anybody. I mean, they have elected to use a private service. You go to a private medical consultation, you'll pay VAT at the end of that bill. You use the NHS, you won't. Now, we have to decide whether we do want to raise a bit more money for the children that didn't have your break.
Taxes are at an all-time...
I've got a lot of friends who send their children to private schools, and I completely agree with you, often bankrupt themselves, forego holidays and new cars and electric vehicles. Well, maybe that's not
Well, they're going to end up in the state sector.
And they will... No, I expect if they really think it's that important, what I also know is so many of them put a lot of their money into going to these private schools and then come moaning to me, but Jack or Jill didn't get into Oxford, Jack or Jill didn't get into a top university.
That's a different moan. But you're too sanguine, I think, Dennis, about the massive damage that overtaxing everything... By the way, it's not just these schools that are coming in the crosshairs of taxation. You know, taxation, as we know, is at a post-World War II high. And that's under a Conservative government. And you get Labour, they're going to take it to another level. There's a limit to how much taxation you can levy on the United Kingdom. We are going to break.
I've no problems with that, and I argue written consistently, we should look at European models where people insure themselves, where they make some contribution. This assumption, everything should be free, dates from right now, It's a very good article in the Sunday Times of how Tories' policy in favour of pensioners, whatever pensioners want, give it to them, could break the economy, because that's their only voting bloc.
That is
No. I think we've gone on to an interesting plane. But I'm afraid we have to stop right there. And actually, some of those schools do some real charitable things.
They do.
Like I know that the school that I used to go to does a thing where it goes into the community and gets the elderly, old people who can't get out of their houses, and they take them all for a nice meal, and the kids help and everything. I think the Labour Party need to have a rethink about that one, because this country is being taxed to the hilt. But what do you think? Get your thoughts in. We need to read some of those emails out. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we will continue with Head to Head. And we're going to be looking at Rishi Sunak and the ads that are attacking him that appear to have started a row in the Labour Party, with reports that senior Labour figures were not consulted about the campaign. So, should the party continue with them? They're quite controversial. More on that shortly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Here's your latest headlines at 5:33. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. That's the warning from NHS National Medical Director Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned with hospitals facing nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman-Bishkoff motorhome, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband Peter Murrell earlier this week. Up to 10 people are believed to be trapped under the rubble after 2 residential buildings collapsed in Marseille. France's Interior Minister says an explosion caused the incident, sparking a fire that complicated rescue efforts. 5 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Residents of 30 other buildings have also been evacuated. President Emmanuel Macron tweeted that his thoughts are with Marseille. And the King, Queen Consort and other senior royals have attended an Easter church service at Windsor Castle. It was held at St George's Chapel and was the first of Charles's reign. The occasion falls on the 2nd anniversary of Prince Philip's death. Both he and the late Queen are interred in the grounds of the 15th century chapel. You're watching GB News on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Right, it's coming up to 35 minutes after 3 o'clock. Still to come on the show today. The panel will be going head-to-head to discuss whether Labour should continue to deploy the dirty tricks tactics. That's on the way next. And we'll just be looking at Caitlyn Jenner. Was she right to call Nike woke following their sponsorship of a trans woman to advertise women's sports bras? Then don't miss my monologue at 4. I'll be talking about the NHS and why the striking junior doctors are being greedy and how the health system needs fundamental reform to survive.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. And there's been loads of things going on. So next up on the menu is this. There's been huge backlashes over the tweet that was posted by the Labour Party this week, which says, do you think that adults convicted of sexually assaulting children should go to prison? Well, Rishi Sunak doesn't. I mean, of all the weak advertising messages that I've ever seen, that is one of the weakest. And it appears the tweet from the Labour Party has actually caused controversy within its own party. There are also reports today that senior figures like Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper weren't informed or consulted about the ad, despite her being in charge of Labour's crime policy. The revelations come as sources claim the party will double down on its personal attacks on the Prime Minister and accuse him of effectively decriminalising rape in its next ad. It's so distasteful. Right, let's see what my panel make of that. Let's welcome them back on. Reform UK former MEP Ben Habib and also former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. I'm going to start with you. What do you think, Ben?
Well, I'm no fan of Rishi Sunak's. I'm very critical of his economic policy, his approach to the Union, particularly Northern Ireland, and his approach to Brexit. Three things. He bangs his own chest on and says, you know, I'm a Conservative, I'm a Brexiteer, and I'm a Unionist. He's none of those.
Little chest, isn't it?
He's a very little chest, very narrow.
With little hands. Little chest and little hands. I'm terrible, aren't I? Sorry, that's naughty.
That's very chestist.
It is chestist, isn't it?
Small chestist.
Small chestist, yes. Go on.
But you're right, it's like that helmet he wore when he was going to get into a jet fighter. It looked kind of weird, didn't it?
I didn't see that.
Did you not see that? Oh, it completely misshapen. It looked very odd.
Oh, did it look really
Never have had
like one of those diving bells?
Yeah.
It's more like a meta one. You put it on that and suddenly the world...
I think it's trying to look like Maverick. But, you know, Maverick's in a different league, isn't
it? His eyes didn't line up with it because it was so big.
Anyway,
sorry, go on.
Having gone down that little cul-de-sac, reversing straight back out. Look, I'm very critical of Rishi Sunak on things that matter. But it is completely wrong to vilify the man and to claim that he doesn't want to put paedophiles in jail. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I disagree with him on many, many things, and I think he is not entirely honest with the electorate when he describes himself. But on this issue, we can be utterly confident that he would bang them away for the longest possible time. Of
course he would.
And I think that, it's the Labour Party. They're not fit for office. The Labour Party have never been fit for office. We've just discussed the taxes they want to levy on schools. We know that they've got an open border policy. We've been discussing that. And here we have them using, dog whistle politics, denigrating the reputation of our Prime Minister, dragging it through the mud. And, Dennis, I know you'll agree with me on that one.
Will you, Dennis? I mean, the Labour Party, they don't really need to be doing this, seeing as they're so far ahead in the polls. You would think that they might try and focus on some of the policies that we're interested in and try and bring us to them that way. Instead, they're doing this.
That would be wonderful if Rishi
it,
Sunak didn't get up and start accusing Keir Starmer of not prosecuting Jimmy Savile, a complete contemptible lie. An absolute four-star lie.
But it wasn't Rishi Sunak that said that.
No, it was Boris Johnson. Then Sunak backed him.
But Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson was referring to Keir Starmer.
Two wrongs don't make a right, though, Dennis.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
But anyway,
the other point.
But anyway, even though it was Boris Johnson that said that, the Labour Party castigated anybody who said things like that. So they're doing exactly the same thing. That's the point I was trying to make.
Sure. I mean, I was appalled. We've had this discussion, I think, earlier this week about Suella Braverman talking about gangs of Pakistani men raping white. Notice the word white, English girls. Let's not go into it again.
No, you started it. I think
this is gutter territory.
No, it's not gutter territory. What Suella was calling out was a fear to prosecute people of Pakistani background for fear of being accused of being racist.
Ben,
she was absolutely right to call it out.
You're always defending. The words were very clear. Pakistani gangs rape white English girls.
That's not what she said, Dennis. She said that they must be prosecuted without fear, without favour, and that the law enforcement agencies must not be cowed into not taking action for fear of being accused of being racist. And I completely agree with her.
But that's why there are plenty of Pakistani men behind bars, not remotely the same number as white English men. That's the difference. She didn't mention them, did she?
But here's the thing, Dennis.
Should we go back to
86% of the 86% of the population is white, and there are many fewer white people proportionately out of the white population that actually commit that crime than there are from those communities that she was calling out. And you've got to look at it. We've got to have an honest discussion if we're going to get a grip of the problem. Well, I think you're holding your head in your hands.
Dennis. So let's get back.
All right, I come from an Irish background. It's what you guys said about the Irish. What in a different context?
What did I say about?
No, you didn't personally. But the right will always pick on a minority. I think that 1.5 million Pakistanis we have in Britain contribute so much.
But what's that got to do with the price of fish? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
The price of fish. Let's talk about Labour, shall we?
I think we should before we.
I'm very, very happy, and I condemned it yesterday, straight out on Twitter. I don't like that gutter politics. I don't like Braverman's gutter politics. Now, the interesting thing is, which I find really frightening, Nana and Ben, apparently this blasted advertisement has got 24 million hits already. It's the single fastest rising hit in the social media community because that is what we've done when we've gutterised our politics. And just as...
Agreed, I agree.
And we go on and on, depicting people, offering them up as gangs and rapists, offering up... I mean, the vast majority of the people who arrive in this country claiming refuge, the Home Office says again and again, have a well-founded case.
No, Dennis, they have entered the country illegally. You conflate issues. No, the problem with the boats is not that they may or may not have a legitimate asylum claim. It's that they've come from a safe country illegally into our country. That's the problem.
Well, look, if either you actually say the Jews are being persecuted or the people are being persecuted in Eritrea...
No one was persecuting these people in France.
Hang on a minute.
We've gone right back to the first debate.
Stop.
All right.
Nobody's talking about...
On Labour's attack ad...
No. Stop, Dennis. Nobody's talking about the Jews and persecution. We've moved on from all of that. We're actually talking about the Labour tweet. So let's get back to the tweet.
Well, let's get back to that. I personally, as I say, deplore it. I think Labour lacks the touch of an Alistair Campbell, maybe a Peter Mandelson. Don't forget that Tony Blair and George Brown were fantastic hands-on journalists. I'll never forget briefing Tony with other people before Prime Minister's Question Time, before 1997. And we sit in the office, his office, just behind the Speaker's chair, 11 o'clock, looking at all the questions. He comes in and says, right, has anybody checked that? Have you seen what's running on Sky? Do you see that thing that just broke an hour ago? He was like a news editor in my early days as a journalist, a real hands-on news chief. I don't think there's anybody around Sir Keir at the moment, or he himself,
but
with
you
that
don't
ability.
Need someone. You don't need someone with media experience to recognise that actually that tweet and that image of Rishi Sunak not wanting to put paedophiles in jail is just wrong. You don't do it.
Well,
it's just wrong.
OK, I accept that, but equally the next one, the point is we've had a terrible 13 years on crime in this country, starting with Theresa May taking 20,000 cops off the streets.
Yeah, I'm going to move on. All right, listen, because I want to read some of the messages that have come through. I'm not going to read that one out to you, Dennis. No, I don't think I can say that on TV. Colin says this. Colin, thank you very much for your message. He says, if private schools have to charge VAT on fees, they would then be entitled to claim back their input VAT on buildings, energy, paper, etc., making another hole in the amount Labour hopes to collect. I know, it's a mess, isn't it? They just have not thought this through at all. It just sounds good, and then they say it out loud, and then everyone starts working it out. Hang on, somebody spent...
But the parents who pay the fees can't reclaim the VAT.
No, that's right. The parents can't claim it, but the schools can. So the only
these are all good arguments.
Out, yeah, exactly. Well done. Thank you for that. I'm glad you pointed it out. I don't think Keir Starmer's thought of that. So well done for mentioning it to him. Hang on, Dennis McShane's a great advert as to how retirement age should not rise.
How what?
Retirement age shouldn't rise. Thank you, Margaret.
I'm pleased not to be included in that.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Well, let's keep going. Let's move on. Let's discuss the next one, because this topic really got my goat. And yesterday I did a monologue on it because I was absolutely furious, because I do not like to see women being obliterated and in their place men being put in things that are specifically and solely something that a woman would use, like a bra. And if you saw it the other day, you'd have seen the trans athlete wearing a bra, modelling a bra from Nike and doing some exercise and so on and so forth, and basically parodying, caricaturing a woman, which is just a bit irritating. Trans athlete Caitlyn Jenner slammed Nike following the release of the sponsored TikTok, which features Dylan Mulvaney is the name of the trans influencer. She took to Twitter saying, "It is a shame to see such an iconic American company go so woke. We can be inclusive, but not at the expense of the mass majority of people, and have some decency whilst being inclusive. This is an outrage." So are we heading towards a future where all major brands virtue signal for marketing? I think they've been doing that for a long time, but maybe they've signalled too far. Let's start with Dennis McShane and find out what he thinks about it.
Well, I went to see a lovely film on Friday called Rye Lane. Strongly recommended to anybody.
Is this connected?
Yep, because I talked to a young woman the next day who was out with me canvassing, who is in fashion, and she'd gone to see that film with Ben Affleck about Nike hiring Michael Jordan, taking a punt in the early 1980s on their Air shoe. I run marathons, but I don't really know much about shoes.
Yeah, OK.
And they've zoomed, thanks to that combination of Air, Nike, it's pronounced Nike, it's the Greek word for victory, and what this is about, I don't quite get, but I must say either Nike have got a nose for where the money will be, in which case it's a great success, or they're going to come a real cropper. I'm not passionate enough to denounce. I mean, if people don't want to wear a
but
brand...
OK, can I ask you a question then, Dennis? What is a woman?
A woman?
What is a woman?
Well, you're a woman.
Which is what?
Well, my two daughters are women.
Which is what? If you could describe a woman, what would you say? Don't do a Keir Starmer and say,
Well, I mean, defined by what she has and hasn't got when she's born in her or with her body, if you like.
What is a woman?
Her biological sex is a...
What?
Does a woman have a penis?
No.
Thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely right. Got there in the end.
Is that what you wanted me to say?
Well, I just wanted to know whether you knew what one was.
Well, you've got your cue cards there. I haven't.
No, I'm not reading that. I'm just asking you questions.
No, I'm genuinely... I mean, some of it... Look, if my children come to me in their late teens and say, son, daughters, Daddy, I really think I'm a man, or Daddy, I really think I'm a woman, well, I would try to handle it as gently as possible. It seems to be grabbed by absolute fanatics who are hustling people off a stage if they make your point, which is all absolutely wrong. I mean, you've not got communists or Trotskyists or racists making any of the noises these days. It seems to be trans people. Nike have taken a punt on this. Is there a giant woke athletic shoe audience or buyership out there? Or the
she's
bras?
Selling bras, but she hasn't got any breasts.
She hasn't got, well...
She hasn't got any breasts. She's selling bras.
But I think Caitlyn Jenner's absolutely called this right. This is the ultimate in woke, if you like. And let's just define woke. You know, it's the ostensible promotion of minorities at the exclusion and often to the detriment of the majority. And transgender, there are only 250,000 transgender people in the United Kingdom without wishing to diminish their rights. And they're perfectly entitled to be transgender and obviously have lives completely unprejudiced against them as a result of their gender identity. But what they mustn't be doing is promoting those interests to the detriment of women, but also to the detriment of pure common sense, society and common sense.
And logic and reality.
Absolutely.
Because
and
actually, look, this person is not a woman.
And that's a really important... Nana, that's a really important point. I just want to say one thing. Nana, that's a really important point, because we're having our speech undermined by that kind of thing. We're making a nonsense of reality. And if a nation can't actually think straight, it becomes a very vulnerable nation in all other respects.
Who is the... I mean, I love covering these rows because there's discussions and people have opponents. Ben always has an opponent in Fix's mind. It's not always me, sometimes. But who's the opponent now? Is it Nike that we should be criticising? Are we saying Nike should be banned from this ad? Or
I don't
exactly?
think anyone should be banned. But what I'm saying is that there are many brilliant female athletes who could have easily done this campaign.
Championing women's
sport and championing women's products. I mean, this person has even promoted Tampax. I mean, you know, does not have a period.
And Dylan
we're living in delusion.
Dylan hasn't completely transgendered.
No, he's got all the parts of a man.
Yeah, he's got the parts of a man.
Why are you banging on about this silly man, stroke woman, or whatever we call them now, when it's Nike bosses, Nike advertising
executives? Well, that's what we're saying. That's why
you're a businessman.
No, I agree.
Caitlyn Jenner was pointing out that Nike has turned woke, and what is the worry about this is that they are parting ways with the truth, and they are forcing literally a narrative that I am not comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with being forced to accept this because I don't think
we're being asked to accept the ludicrous.
And if I say something, I'm going to be called transphobic.
Can I agree?
I'm going to be called transphobic. I'm going to be called some sort of name.
I'm not calling you that.
But not you, but there'll be trans activists.
But hang on a second.
Now.
I mean, we seem to think that all you have to do is slap the label woke on anything you don't like. I mean, I think...
No, I
watched Chelsea on Tuesday, and, a minority sport. I watched Chelsea on Tuesday and again yesterday. They keep losing. I'm going to start calling them woke, because I want to really insult them and get up there.
No.
We should stop using this word as a catch-all, right-wing sort of insult.
It's not.
But he did define it before.
There's a very clear definition of woke, which is ostensibly promoting
that's a very
interests.
Recent one.
It's not.
That's how it is.
In the 1930s.
And it's precisely how
it was from the black. It was.
And actually, what it's being used for in its broader context, other than just transgender, is to inculcate division. It's not about inclusion. It's about identifying minorities, promoting them above and beyond and to the detriment of the majority. That is not inclusion. That is division. And that's what this woke culture is about. It's about division. BLM is not about all people being equal. It's about promoting black people to the detriment of the broader population.
Well, I saw a play yesterday.
It's inculcating division.
I saw a play yesterday in London. It was a debate between James Baldwin, the great American writer, George Buckley, the great American conservative. And it was exactly on that issue. And Baldwin said, "We are not yet free because we don't have rights." He said, "You will be free one day, and stop moaning." And I think, if you want to emancipate people, perhaps you have to go down the road. I don't think anything to do with emancipation, by the way, the Nike decision. I mean, it's just a cheap shot, like Labour's attack ad. We're rowing about it. It's getting huge publicity for them. Clever boys.
Well, listen, I've got a message here from Cheryl. Cheryl says, every time I put on GB News, Nana Akua is taking the out of the Labour guy and laughing in his face.
No.
Well, I think it's not just me. I think everyone's laughing. It's not just me, Cheryl, because he's saying some nonsense, Cheryl, and I have to laugh, otherwise I'll cry.
We're having a chat.
Suella Braverman and I are politicians who like being fake comedians.
Nana Easter, loving 2 chocolate Easter eggs, fabulous. Well, stay with me. We've got loads more on the way, plus my monologue is coming up at 4 o'clock. Do not go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Over the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. That's the warning from NHS National Medical Director Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned with hospitals facing nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman-Bischoff motorhome, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband, Peter Murrell, earlier this week. The leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, Douglas Ross, told us people need answers.
It's now been going on for, I think, 18 months, almost 2 years. It's been an extensive inquiry, and we saw that Peter Morel was interviewed for almost the maximum 12 hours, released without charge, but pending further investigation, and a significant amount of evidence taken away from both their home and SNP headquarters. So I think people want answers, and those answers have to come from Nicola Sturgeon, from Hamza Yusuf, and those at the top of the SNP.
The mother of Olivia Pratt-Corbell has told the Sunday Mirror the law should be changed to force all criminals to attend their sentencing. Cheryl Corbell has spoken out after her daughter's killer, Thomas Cashman, refused to appear in the dock as he was jailed for a minimum of 42 years. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab says he is planning to change the law. A new survey suggests more than 1 in 10 teachers have been physically assaulted by a pupil in the last year. The Teachers' Union says they've been kicked, bitten and punched by pupils, whilst more than 1 in 4 have faced verbal abuse from a parent or carer. The findings have been released during the union's annual conference in Glasgow. Today, delegates will vote on a motion which suggests assaults are seen as a normal part of teaching in too many schools. The government is expected to crack down on the illegal sale of e-cigarettes to children with a new illicit vape enforcement squad. The Department of Health and Social Care says task forces will carry out test purchasing at shops. It will also share intelligence with local authorities. The squads will also have the power to remove illegal products from shops and at borders. Thousands of expectant mothers are set to receive a maternity allowance boost of 10.1%. The increase will see payments go up by £15.82 a week. It equates to around £617 over the 39 weeks it can be claimed. The Department of Work and Pensions says the automatic increase will benefit around 40,000 parents this year. Up to 10 people are believed to be trapped under the rubble after 2 residential buildings have collapsed in Marseille. France's Interior Minister says an explosion caused the incident, sparking a fire that complicated rescue efforts. 5 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Residents of 30 other buildings have also been evacuated. President Emmanuel Macron has tweeted that his thoughts are with Marseille. China's military has carried out simulated precision strikes on Taiwan. That's according to the country's state broadcaster. CCTV says forces continued to encircle the island as part of 3 days of military drills focused on the disputed territory. Forces have reportedly been focusing on key targets on land and in surrounding waters. Taiwan's defense ministry has also reported multiple Air Force sorties. The King and Queen Consort and other senior royals have attended an Easter church service at Windsor Castle. It was held at St George's Chapel and was the first of Charles's reign. The occasion falls on the 2nd anniversary of Prince Philip's death. Both he and the late Queen are interred in the grounds of the 15th century chapel. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. Let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. The No Help Service, the NHS. On Tuesday, over 47,000 junior doctors, pretty much half the NHS's medical workforce, are planning to walk out for 4 days in a row. And the dates have been selected by the British Medical Association, or the BMA, which is the doctors' trade union, and directly after the Easter bank holiday to cause maximum harm. Very caring. Now, they're asking for a 35% pay rise. It's astonishing, really. And actually, that an institution that is doing a job so badly can have the nerve to ask for so much more money. A totally unrealistic amount, which would likely spike inflation. And in the end, if the demands are met, will push its recipients into higher tax brackets. I mean, it wouldn't be worth that much at all. The price, however, to us, the taxpayer, would be astronomical. And in a cost of living crisis caused by a pandemic and war, both of which were not in our control, it seems a bitter pill to swallow that we, the general public, should be made to suffer in this way as a result. Yes, I have absolute sympathy for the junior doctors, but let's get something straight. The NHS has been in a terrible state for some time, and it simply isn't fair to put all the blame into the hands of the Tory party. In fact, it's been going downhill for decades and over successive governments. Let's not pretend that this is just the Conservative Party's fault. Let's be honest about what they inherited and from whom. Tony Blair. The history of his reforms hardly bear repeating. First, he dismantled general practice, the fund holding there. Then he set up primary care groups, made them into primary care trusts, and then merged them again, halving their number. He resurrected regional health authorities as 28 strategic health authorities and then merged them back again into an original 10 regions. He shuffled the deck chairs more than the Titanic. Tony Blair turned the NHS into a competitive entity, the opposite to what it was meant to be. Hospitals got into debt, which made no sense because there's so much money sloshing about. Some hospitals closed or lost their A&E or maternity services. Save Our Hospital campaigns sprang up everywhere, a gift to the Tories, who frankly hadn't fared much better. They've made a mess of it as well. So to add insult to injury for the hundreds and thousands of patients whose treatment is going to be disrupted or cancelled during this week's strikes, GPs are being offered up to £200 per hour to work in A&E departments. Hospital bosses are scared of walkouts, which could cost lives. I mean, it's a complete and utter farce. And we, the taxpayers, are being shafted. And frankly, I've had enough. Tony Blair's legacy created a sea change in the way the NHS operates, and subsequent ministers from parties all over this country, the Tory party in particular, have continued to mess about with it. And in the meantime, we hear that public sector workers, so people like workers from the NHS, will get pension increases worth double the average pay rise, again funded by us, the taxpayer. And as I said, I believe many junior doctors should be paid a bit more. But the way they've gone about this particular strike to cause maximum harm and without, it appears, proper negotiation doesn't make me feel that they do actually care. I've had enough. We are already heading in the direction of a two-tier health service, so let's make it official. If you want more money, join the private sector. It's time for a rethink. It's time to scrap the NHS. Well, Danny's eyes popped out and he said, he went, whoa. Yeah. Right, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? King Charles is reportedly at loggerheads with the Church of England over the role other faiths will play in the coronation next month. So should other faiths be equally represented? Then at 4:50, it's Trump Watch. Donald Trump has become the first former president to be arrested on criminal charges. The host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, will be joining me to give me the latest on a very dramatic week in American politics. Then at 5, it's this week's Outside. My guest is a surprise, an extremely talented musician. They were part of a band named after a traditional Christmas drink. Can you guess who that is? Well, that's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel Christine Hamilton. She's an author and broadcaster, and then journalist and author and broadcaster. I'm being very generous, but somebody's been working the writing on here. They've not mentioned you, Christine. They've not said that you're
No,
author.
I'm not a... Well, I don't
Take
care.
the
I'm a
time.
housewife. Would you please just describe me as a housewife? Happy housewife.
She's a happy housewife.
Would be easier all round.
All right, fair enough. Right, so Danny Kelly, I'll start with you then. The NHS, I think it's just crippling. It's a mess. It's just...
How would you replace it then? What's your other model? Your alternative
I ask
model?
you the questions. I'm asking.
No, it's just when you say
I'm
you
starting
scrap
with
it.
you. No. I've given you a monologue. I want your opinion.
Yeah, but, OK, so you're saying scrap the NHS. My question is, so I'm giving you an opinion on something I'm not aware of, Plan B. But as far as the NHS is concerned, for the benefit of those listening on the radio, there were people holding placards saying Tory snakes. So the TV viewers watch that. And I really hate the way that the Conservative Party is just being blamed for everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's only so much money to go around. and the Tories are deciding to spend it in a typically conservative manner. There's a clue in the name, conservative.
Yeah.
I always say to people, if you know that you're going to be on £14 an hour, which is on the placard, you know, you knew the salary. Why become a junior doctor and then complain about the salary? Yes, I get the inflation bit. The inflationary aspect is something that is recent. I understand all of that. But everybody is feeling the effect. And it's going to potentially, as you said, Nana, spike inflation.
Well, exactly.
You know, they're moaning about the inflation. If you give them a load more dough, then they're going to be moaning more about the inflation. And then they're going to want more dough because the inflation that they've caused is going up.
Well, and also they'll be pushing a higher tax bracket, which will mean that they'll get less money than they think. And as you go up those tax brackets, it makes a lot of difference in the money that you take home.
It's the junior doctors going on strike, but what is a junior doctor? A junior doctor is anybody in the profession who is not either a consultant, a GP, or a specialised doctor. So it's a massive, huge bracket. And there are junior doctors who have just arrived, and there are junior doctors who've been there 6 or 7 years. So we're talking about, and some of those will be earning quite a lot of money, and they're all apparently on strike. Yeah. It's very political, this. They have chosen it to be maximum impact. You know, bank holiday weekend, a lot of people who might otherwise have come in are on holiday, etc., etc. If you wanted to create a health service, you wouldn't start with the National Health Service that we've got, would you? It is idiotic. It might have been fit for purpose when it first started, an incredibly laudable idea, free at the point of delivery, etc. But now it has become absolutely crippled with bureaucracy. I discovered an appalling thing in the newspaper that the NHS paid headhunters nearly £4 million to fill new roles. They appointed these headhunters. I've got it here, so let's get it right. They wanted chief executives, 42 of them, who were going to be paid up to £275,000 each. They spent £4 million employing headhunters to find these people. They then actually filled all bar 4 from people who were already working within the NHS, and many of them were local to the place where they were going to have the new job. So it was a complete and utter waste of taxpayers' money. We need to get more money into the NHS.
No, I don't think we do.
Hang on, let me finish.
Too much.
We do. No. We need to get more money into the health service. But there's no point pouring more money into the NHS if they're going to waste it like that. Well, more people need to have insurance. More people need to start saving for the sort of things that you're bound to have as you get older. Just like people save for their pensions, they've got to start saving for their new hips, their new knees. The health service will be there if you have a really serious problem. But all this elective stuff that people had, I mean, I've had it myself. Why should the taxpayer pay for that? And don't let's forget, these doctors, it isn't just the salary, they're getting incredibly generous pension arrangements that people in the private sector would kill for. Of course they want more money. Everybody wants more money at the moment, and I think it was Danny who said, give the doctors what they want and everybody will just go leapfrogging ahead.
35%, is that what they wanted?
Madness.
40%? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
It's madness.
Well, there's 35%, and there wasn't even the proper consultations first. They just went straight on strike.
That's just stupid.
So to me, it's like, and they're saying, but we care, and what we did in the pandemic, that was laudable.
Excuse
it was wonderful.
me.
But a lot of people did a lot of things. It wasn't just them. You had shop workers who were working. I had to go to work. Lots of people worked. I know it was a very scary time, but you know, that can't be the whole... That can't be, oh, well, we did that, because now I think this is quite uncaring, isn't it? Like, you've had the bank holiday where we know the services are all not great, and now you're going to have this as well. 4 days consecutive.
It's nothing to... I mean, this business about we care... I mean, my father was a GP back in the day, and he was on duty 24/7, literally 24/7. He didn't complain. He never went on strike. And it isn't... Another massive problem that the health service has got is... social care, and it is at the moment there are vast numbers of people. I can't remember what the statistic is, but it's something. It's a horrendous percentage of people who are in hospital who should be in care homes, and they are just looking after people, and it's very expensive to look after old people who should be just in a care home in an NHS hospital.
Also, the doctors take the derivative is from ancient Greek. Is it the Hippocratic Oath?
Hippocratic Oath. To do no harm. Well, striking...
Well, it's counterintuitive to the oath that they've taken. So they take an oath, and simplistic.
Sorry to interrupt, but apparently they don't take it anymore.
They don't. How interesting.
Because they don't.
But the spirit is there. Whether they actually take it or not, the spirit of the Hippocratic Oath is there. So they join a profession in order to save lives and treat people, and that's their primary motivation. It's coming across now that the primary motivation is financial remuneration rather than actually looking after people. And I go back to my earlier point. The doctor waving a placard saying, Tory snakes, I want more than £14 an hour. Did no one tell you what your hourly rate was when you signed up for this?
And also, did no one tell you that actually part of the mess that we're in is caused by the Labour Party and Tony Blair's reforms? Even though at the time he had quite good result times in terms of how long he'd wait for A&E, the debts, the PFI contracts and things like that left hospitals in debt has meant that now they are literally sponging money. So, no, it's not just the Tory party. It's not the Tory party's fault. It's all of them. They've made a mess of it. But these people aren't helping. And I don't know why they think 35% is a good amount. We also know that inflation is likely to be coming down quite considerably over the next few months.
I've been saying this for ages.
Well, we know it will.
It should be index-linked. You know, like Mickey Lynch, my lookalike, the train guy, the union leader.
No, he's a bit thinner than you.
Well,
Christine.
Christine.
Oh, Nana.
Only 10 minutes.
You know,
only 10 minutes into it.
He is thinner.
We're not talking about my size. We're talking about.
But you talked about Mick Lynch.
Mickey Lynch. I know, but then you imply that I'm overweight. I'm just saying.
Say that.
My lookalike. Anyway, Mickey Lynch, who was banging on. Mickey Lynch.
He's Mick. Mickey makes him sound
now
rather
you're
cosy.
correcting him. Now you're correcting him.
No one's correcting me. They're correcting you.
Mickey makes him sound rather cosy, and he is far from cosy.
I admire his tenacity. I disagree with him, but I admire Mick's tenacity. Anyway, he said it's all about inflation. And I said, OK, Mick, if you want an inflationary pay hike, then it needs to be index-linked. So when it comes down, when inflation plummets, so does your salary, mate.
Yeah, no, Mick's not going to have that.
Of course he's not. I don't think that's quite what he had in mind.
Marxist Mick.
Your friend, Mickey Lynch. Well, listen, stay with us. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. If you've just joined us after the break, it's time for the Great British Debate This Out. And I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? Now, the King has made no secret of his desire to have a more diverse ceremony than his mother did in 1953, but church leaders are reportedly resisting a more active role for other faiths, not only because it's an Anglican ceremony, but also because old canon law bars Muslim, Hindu, Jewish and other faith leaders from reading prayers during the ceremony. So what do you think? I mean, is he right to be heading in that direction? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet me at GBNews. I've got a poll up right now asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? Cast your vote now.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News, I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. If you've just joined us, we are the People's Channel. Now, before the break, I was discussing the junior doctor strike. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Helen says if any patients die during the doctor strike, they must bear responsibility and be tried for corporate manslaughter. Lewis says, you are absolutely correct. The NHS since Tony Blair has been an unmitigated disaster. Patricia says it is time to abandon the notion that the NHS is too sacred to reform. I agree with you. I think it needs to be completely reformed. I get rid of it and start again, call it something else. Christine says, Nana, perhaps you should work a 40-hour week with no break and half the staff off sick and then criticise. I do, actually, and there's... you know what? We're close to that here. No, listen, seriously, I don't think that the NHS workers don't work hard. I believe they do. But the whole structuring, the way it's done, it just needs to be changed. It can't carry on like that, really. Seriously. And actually striking is probably going to make things a whole lot worse. But right now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? Now, King Charles is reportedly at loggerheads with the Church of England over the role other faiths will play in his coronation next month. The King has made no secret of his desire to have a more diverse ceremony than his mother did in 1953. But church leaders are reportedly resisting a more active role for other faiths, not only because it's an Anglican ceremony, but also because old canon laws bar Muslim, Hindu, Jewish and other faith leaders from reading prayers during the ceremony. So what do you think for the Great British Debate this hour? I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? So to debate this, I'm joined by Ben Habib, member of Reform UK and former MEP, former Labour MP Dennis McShane and Director of Car 26 Lois Perry and royal commentator Michael Cole. Michael, I want to start with you. Michael, what do you think about this multi-faith approach?
The important thing to say from the start, Nana, is none of the religious leaders in this country is actually asking for an active role in the coronation. And of course, they're all going to be present in the Abbey. And more than that, the King has invited the Chief Rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, to actually stay overnight at Clarence House because the coronation takes place on the Jewish Sabbath and he would be forbidden to travel in a car. He can walk with his wife to the Abbey. So all of those religious leaders will be there. And let's look at this from its historical point of view. A constitutional monarchy, which we're lucky enough to live in, is an invaluable defense against extremism and dictatorship. And the coronation is the supreme and the most important moment in it. It's all about loyalty. The King is invited to express his loyalty and swear an oath of loyalty to God, to the people, and to the Church. And the Church in this case is the Anglican Church, the Protestant faith. And the Protestant faith, you can argue it one way or the other, but for 550 years has been quite a good thing as far as this country has been concerned. And it's a 1,000-year-old ceremony. And if it is interfered with in any material way, which I don't think it will be, it would be to some extent diluted. And that would be an extraordinarily bad idea.
What would you say to somebody who says, but what he's trying to do, because he said he'll be a sort of a multi-faith king type thing. I mean, that's what he's kind of pitched his stall at.
Yeah, well, there's a possibility of having another ceremony with religious leaders and going through a very good process which would satisfy them. But, you know, the people who've come to this country have come here presumably for one reason, and that's because they think there's something quite good about it. One of the good things about it is the coronation, which is the embodiment of what we believe in this country. It's a frightfully important moment. It's not just marching bands and tea parties and a concert at Windsor Castle. It is central to what this country is. And that supreme moment should not be in any way materially affected for what? I don't think even these religious leaders are asking for that. So to some extent, this is a confected story.
Well, let me bring in Lois Perry. Lois, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, you know, King Charles has been in trouble before for saying, I want to be defender of the faiths. And he actually used one of his actual first speech to say, I am going to defend the Christian faith. I'm going to be defender of the faith when he became king. You know, if this is overturned and if the ceremony is in any way ruined, you know, one of my favourite historical figures, Anne Boleyn, would have lost her head for nothing, because there wouldn't be a Church of England without her. And the king would not be head of the Church of England and defender of the faith without her either. But I think there's a broader point. How can you have a hereditary monarchy that is in itself unfair? It's not woke, but I still support it, and millions do, that's trying to be inclusive and woke. Of course, all of the religious leaders should be represented, but there should be no active part in the service whatsoever. This is the Church of England. He is the head of the Church of England. And just on another point as well, you know, net zero is my thing. There shouldn't be any semi-quasi-religious stuff about net zero and climate either. We've had enough of that. We do not want a woke king.
He might. Well, I'm afraid we've got one. It's too late for that. Let's bring in Dennis McShane. Dennis.
So I just got out a £2 coin, which has fid def, which short of the Latin term defender of the faith, fidelis defendoris, given to Henry VIII by a pope in 1532, because he wrote a magnificent pamphlet saying, down with Protestantism, down with Anglicanism, only the Catholic Church is the true church. Now, I was very struck that the king, when he was Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, said he'd like to be defender of faiths in the plural, respecting all religions. I thought that was quite a good statement of his. And I'm rather sad that all the Catholics of Britain, who didn't come here, Michael, you know, like yesterday, they've been here for longer maybe than you have, I don't know. All the Catholics of Britain, the many Jews, now the many...
You look older than Michael.
Well...
You look older than Michael, man.
Many Catholics, all of them, excluded from it. The Archbishop of Canterbury -1234, Robert Runcie, raised the issue that according to Anglican law, they cannot crown a king who marries a divorced woman.
So hang on, wait, no, hold on. Okay, right. I don't think we're going to get any sense out of you. Ben Habib. I don't know what he's talking about.
Bring them all in.
Terrific trot we're about to go on through the history books. But, I mean, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. You know, King Charles is constitutional head of the state, and he's also head of the church. And it's, you know, the Anglican Church. And by all means, be inclusive and have people at the ceremony that, you know, reaches out to broader community. But it mustn't be hijacked in any way. This is a very solemn ceremony being conducted through, you know, the Church of England, and that's how it should be.
You think? So let me see. So pretty much all of you agree that King Charles shouldn't be bringing in these other faiths in an active manner on the...
Yeah. No, I disagree.
Oh, you disagree?
OK.
Well, we never got to it, did we? He disagrees. This is what...
Come on. I can't just be...
Nana, that's so sacred that actually it has to be done privately, where he is anointed, and it's seen as such a sacred part of the ceremony that it's actually done in private. It's just between him and God, and it's an Anglican ceremony, and we are an Anglican country.
Well,
well said, Lewis.
I don't really, if they want to take him away and drop a bit of oil on his head, we're the last monarchy in Britain, the only one in the world that has this coronation. We haven't had one for, 70 years. We'll do it very well. We love pageants, we love colour and trooping and soldiers and all the rest of it. But I just do think, I would like to see the Catholics of Britain there, some acknowledgement, the Jews of Britain, the Muslims of Britain, Hindus, Buddhists from Suella Braverman, whoever. We're a multi-faith community, and that's one of our strengths now.
You keep bringing in Suella Braverman. Come on, Michael Cole. Michael.
Yes, well, Dennis has dropped his drop of oil on it and tried to trivialise it. But the Archbishop of Westminster, the leader of the Catholic Church in England, he isn't campaigning to take part. He knows his place, he knows his history, and he knows what's to be gained by continuity. And that's what it's all about. And the anointing is extremely important because after the king will be anointed, he will be invested with the symbols of power and authority, not for his own glory, but for the glory of God and in the service of the people.
Lois.
Sorry, Lois.
Yeah, I just absolutely agree. He's doing this ceremony is not for tourists. It's for us, and he is anointed by God. And yeah, it's sacred. It needs to stay the same. All the faiths should be there, but only the Church of England should be running the ceremony. It is an Anglican ceremony. Yeah, he shouldn't ruin it. We mustn't have the woke king and the woke coronation.
10 seconds to Dennis McShane.
Very simply, but Michael and Lois know far more about this in the faith and the role of the Anglican Church than I do as a Catholic. Does the king go to church every Sunday? I know we saw him today.
Michael, does he go every Sunday?
He does.
The important thing, Dennis, is that this is a sacred, almost a marriage between the monarch and the people of this country and his overseas realms. There's even a ring that is put on his finger. The vows are recited aloud so that everybody can hear them, and then he's acclaimed. And that would never happen in the Romanovs or the Hohenzollerns or the Habsburgs of Austria. It's not democratic, but it has elements of democracy in it. He has to be acclaimed, and we welcome him as our king. And when we say, long live the king, we should mean it.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Michael Cole. Lovely to talk to you. Michael Cole, he's, of course, a royal commentator. Lois Perry from Car 26, Dennis McShane, former Labour MP, and also Ben Habib, former MEP, and, of course, member of Reform. So what do you think? What are your thoughts? You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. You can also catch us live and stream us on YouTube. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good evening. Here's the latest headlines from the GB newsroom at 4:34. A funeral has been held for two British-Israeli sisters who were killed in an attack by Palestinians. Rina and Maya D, aged 16 and 20, were shot in their car near an Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank on Friday. Their mother remains in a critical condition. Conflict has flared up in the region over Easter, Ramadan and Passover. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. That's the warning from the NHS National Medical Director, Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned with hospitals facing nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman Bishkoff motorhome, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband Peter Murrell earlier this week. Up to 10 people are believed to be trapped under the rubble after 2 residential buildings collapsed in Marseille. French authorities say an explosion caused the incident, sparking a fire that complicated rescue efforts. 5 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Residents of 30 other buildings have also been evacuated. President Emmanuel Macron has tweeted that his thoughts are with Marseille. And some breaking news, 4 people have been killed and several others injured in an avalanche on the French Alps. France's Interior Minister said the incident happened in the middle of the day on the Armancet glacier. Rescue workers are continuing to search for other casualties. We'll bring you more on this as and when we get it. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Bethany. Right, lots more to come here on GB News, including my mystery guest on Outside. Now, she's been in the music industry for decades. In 2019, she branched out to play the evil queen in a stage production of Snow White. Can you guess who she is? Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be the priority of the King's coronation? That's on the way next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Make sure you download the GB News app where you can check out this show and all the other programmes on the channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's just coming up to 41 minutes after 4 o'clock, and we return to our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? Now, King Charles is reportedly at odds with the Church of England over the role that other faith leaders will play in his coronation next month. The King has expressed a desire to have a more religiously and culturally diverse coronation than his mother did back in 1953. But church leaders are reportedly resisting a more active role for other faiths. So what do you think? Should other faiths be involved actively? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. Let's welcome them back again. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Christine, what is your thoughts on the whole idea of this?
Well, everybody is going to be there. There's going to be an absolute welcoming of all faiths, but they should not have any part in reading lessons or doing prayers or anything like that. It's everybody, they've said it, you've just been talking about it, it's a Christian ceremony. The extraordinary thing to me, absolutely extraordinary, is that what I call, because my husband calls him that, the arch-bedwetter of Canterbury, who has allowed just about every other tenet of faith to be overlooked. He has not really provided what you might call strong leadership to the Church of England, has leapt in and taken up the cudgels on this. So for once, I'm absolutely on his side. I have a secret suspicion that Camilla is on his side as well.
Do you think?
So I just do.
Why?
And Charles, I think, is a sort of lone voice on all this, and I just pray that he is overruled, because it would be absolutely wrong. I can't understand it.
You can't overrule the king.
The answer to the question, well, I would hope that the Archbishop of Canterbury could effectively overrule him when it comes to this issue. He does go to church every Sunday, by the way, because if he's not in some smart place, he goes to the village next door to ours.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I disagree with Christine, which is very rare, because I don't think there needs to be any sort of religious diversity or token inclusion with other religious faiths. I don't see why.
Congregation.
Well, of course, but once you open... OK, but once you have to accept that there are different denominations and religious faiths which are going to be represented there, then you're going to say, OK, well, why don't we have disabled people represented?
They will be.
Why don't... Well, how do you know that?
Well, because there was a list the other day about the people who've been invited and the various organisations.
OK, but my point is then you leave the door wide open to criticism. Why haven't you invited this group of people?
What about the sociologists? Scientologists,
or the Jedi Knights or whatever they call them.
What about some other
But if, for example, there was some sort of religious, like, for example, a Jewish reading or Islamic reading, if people start wishing people happy Hanukkah and peace be upon him and all of that sort of garbage, then I am going to turn into a Republican. It needs to be a Church of England ceremony, and I don't get why you have to have other faiths.
Wait, some people wouldn't call all that garbage, because you said all that garbage, all the different...
Well, that's their opinion. My opinion is that if you're not religious, if you're an atheist, then all religion is garbage.
OK, following on what you've said, if he's going to invite all these people, then presumably he's going to invite... if he's going to invite a representative of Buddhism, Hinduism, he's going to invite a representative...
Trans representative.
He's probably done that as well. That's sex. We're talking about religion. Paganism.
Oh, no.
But you were talking about disability as well, so...
Yeah, I'm talking about minority groups or representation.
No, but you're going off the point. We're talking about religions, various religions.
No, I get that.
Get that. So,
no, I do understand that,
if he is having a Hindu, a Buddhist, etc., in the congregation, presumably he's inviting some pagans, the people who worship at Stonehenge.
Dennis made a good point.
And the humanists.
List of all of them.
For once, I agree with Den. What about Catholics? What about Catholicism?
Well,
we need a list of the faiths that he's got going.
Of course.
Because he might have got some others that he's missed out on.
This is my point.
The Archbishop of Westminster will be there.
Once you go, quote-unquote, woke, you're always going to leave yourself wide open to criticism because there's somebody else who you've not included. And all of a sudden, you're not inclusive. Oh, the King's not inclusive. What about me? I'm a transgender activist who's disabled. What about me? I'm the guy who wears Nike bras. What about me?
Nike, darling, not Nike.
You could probably wear one.
Christine.
Anyway,
Christine, did you hear that? She was mentioning that I've got
may I defend honestly, now, if anybody else... I am not. Yours is showing, by the way.
No, I'm not wearing one. I'm joking.
Oh, yes, you are, because I can see it.
Carry on telling her off anyway. Don't get distracted.
Nobody else would get away with the comments you make about Danny.
Yeah, because Danny and I know we're having fun. We're having fun. You're being very sensible, but you can talk, because sometimes you do the same thing back. Right. Tony, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are the King should just stick to the Anglican element of it.
You think so?
Oh, very much so.
I think he should listen to his wife.
But she might not be saying that.
I bet she did.
You don't know that.
Of course I don't know that.
I think she's anti-woke. I think Kim is anti-woke. She said something a couple of weeks ago that made me think, aye, she's on our side.
Because Prince Philip, he was very anti-woke. So he was,
yes, he was,
He was very anti-woke, so it's interesting that King Charles is so woke in that manner. But maybe he said that he wants to be everybody's king, so he's trying to be everything.
But that's fine.
To everyone, which is nice, but, you know, in the real world, somebody will say, but you didn't include us, or you didn't include us. And it'll be just like the gender pronouns, or where you got, like, what about this one to the new one keeps coming up, and new... He's opening himself up.
He is. Can of worms.
And it's totally wrong anyway. Centuries of tradition will be thrown away if this is anything other than a purely Anglican service.
And for the survivability of the royal family, I think it needs to stick to tradition. I think it has to stick to tradition. Once you start going off the track of tradition, then you leave yourself wide open once again to say, well, OK, do this for me, do that for me, be like this, be like that.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, look, it's a nice notion.
What are the real people out there saying?
Well, let's find out. This show's nothing without them, so let's welcome them onto the show. Our Great British Voices, their opportunity to tell me what they think about the topics we're discussing. And today we're going to head over to Watford to speak to Great British Voice David Baum. God, we could only get one voice today because... Oh, no, it's only 4 o'clock. We've got another hour. David, what do you think about this?
Hello, Nana, guys. I actually happen to agree with everyone. We are in an Anglican country. King Charles is going to be the head of the Church of England. But for years, he's always been inclusive of other religions. He's gone to synagogues, he's gone to temples, he's gone to mosques, as well as church. He is probably the most inclusive monarch that we've had. But the ceremony has to stick to the traditional format. The anointing is by the Archbishop of Canterbury, not by the Archbishop of Westminster. And we have to stick to that whole format. Otherwise, we lose part of our British identity. And if people don't like it, then don't watch.
Yeah. I don't know why he's diluting the ceremony. We do pomp and ceremony very well. And it's quite nice to see tradition being carried on. You know, it just makes you feel... It's almost quite comforting, isn't it, watching tradition as it continues and we feel like we're part of something. I don't mind tradition evolving, but tradition is sort of a contradiction in terms, isn't it? You're traditionally doing something the same way.
We had this at the Queen's funeral. It didn't matter what your faith was, what you believed, whether you're a trans, left-footed referee. It didn't matter. You were supporting the institution of the monarchy and paying respects to Her Majesty the Queen as the head of state. The whole world tuned in to pay respects to the head of state. And we followed the traditional format of the funeral. And we have to do the same for the wedding, for the coronation.
Anyway, well, interesting choice. A trans left-footed referee. Thank you very much, David. It's good to talk to you. That's David Baum. He's our Great British Voices there in Watford. Well, today I've been asking you, should diversity and inclusion be a priority at the King's coronation? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Janet says diversity should be included, but it should not be a priority after all. The King is head of the Church of England. Exactly. Jackie says King Charles, as so many monarchs before him, defender of the faith, singular, the Christian faith, our religious heritage. It is up to the leaders of our faith to defend their faith in their own places of worship and not at the coronation. It's true, actually. Defender of the faith will be defender of the faith in this country. Perhaps not all the other faiths, but you can be inclusive. Jack says the King can be respectful of all faiths, but can only be defender of our faith. That's kind of what I was saying. I must have read ahead. Stephen says the coronation is an Anglican religious service where the King is elevated to his position by God. No other faith would allow us to interfere with a ceremony of theirs that is 1,000 years old. That is a very, very good point. And King Charles, if you're watching, you hear, well, I was about to say you hear me now, but you hear what they're saying. They're telling you that really, defender of our faith. OK, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's Trump Watch. I'll be joined by Paul Dudderidge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast to get all the latest on the charges against Donald Trump. And that's coming up on the way, though, at 5. It's this week's Outside. And my guest today will be joining me in the studio. She's a sensational singer. She teaches dance and performance at a performing arts school in Kent. She was also part of a band that was the name of a drink. Any guesses?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome on board if you've just tuned in. Where have you been? You've missed a couple of hours, but it's fine because you're joining me live. I'm Nana Akua, and we're in the midst. We're coming up to Trump Watch. Yes, because, of course, you know, loads of things have been happening to Donald Trump. He's made a surprise appearance at the UFC match. It comes after he pleaded not guilty to charges of falsifying business records. So joining me to bring us up to date with all the happenings is Paul Dudrett. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. He's there in LA. Paul, what is happening? What's going on? I mean, this was terrible. I think Trump actually looked a bit shell-shocked.
Yeah, well, I think he is shell-shocked. I'll give you the bad news first. He will be found guilty. Okay, they are definitely going to find him guilty. The good news is it will be thrown out on appeal. The better news is even if it's not thrown out on appeal, it'll go up to the Supreme Court. But it'll probably just stop at the Supreme Court of New York. But he is shell-shocked. I mean, this is a disgraceful abuse of power. This is a witch hunt. Everybody can see. The only difference you have on either side of the aisle at the moment is whether or not it's a good thing to abuse the system to bring down Trump. Nobody is arguing, really, that these are legitimate charges. Let me just give you some examples, if you've got a second. Obama, for misappropriation of campaign funds, was fined over Obama's campaign was fined over $300,000. Fined. Hillary Clinton's campaign was fined over $113,000 for the paying for the Steele dossier, the Russia nonsense hoax. They paid $113,000 in fines for misappropriation of campaign funds. Trump is being treated as if this is a felony. And this is where the actual legal problem starts, because this is not a felony. At worst, bookkeeping, this is a misdemeanor. But he is having the book thrown at him. If this case stays in New York, he will be found guilty. He's trying to get it moved to New Jersey, etc. But it probably is going to stay in New York, and he probably will be found. I think he's going to be found guilty.
Well, that's because it's held by the Democrats, isn't it? So, and it's that guy. Yeah, that guy. He hates him. The black guy. I don't know his name.
Alvin Bragg. Yeah,
that's the one.
Alvin Bragg.
He's got history with Trump, and he's obviously on a vendetta. And he clearly doesn't like him. He's a bit like our Harriet Harman. He's a bit like our Harriet Harman in our kangaroo court when they sort of got Boris on his little Partygate business. Oh, he's frozen.
Yeah, I think that's a very generous description of him, to be honest. Yes, not only has he got history, he campaigned because he's an elected official. He campaigned on "Get Trump." I will get Trump was his campaign slogan, or one of his campaign slogans. He said it 1,000 times during his election run that he was going to get Trump. And as I said, promises made, promises kept. He has tried to get Trump. His wife's own Twitter account had to be, she took it down this week, her Twitter account, when she said, like, he said he would get Trump, he's gone and got Trump. This thing is a sieve. This thing is a complete nonsensical banana republic, absolute abuse of power. It will come by. What's the interesting development is that James Comer, get that name right, and now he is the head of. Anyway, he's the head of one of the committees at Congress. I'll give you his proper title in a second. But he's been approached by two attorneys general, Tennessee and Kentucky, I believe. They're looking to now start prosecuting Biden himself because they're going, well, if sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, if you're allowed to just prosecute absolutely anybody. This is exactly started now. They're going after Biden and the Biden family all over the country.
Well, they have to. What about the laptops and the documents that were found in his garage and stuff like that? If they and surely that would be a felony. Surely these would be bigger charges than just the bookkeeping errors of Trump. I mean, these are big deals, right? Well, isn't that worse?
100%. And it's very interesting you bring up the laptop. If you look a few weeks ago, and I don't want to get into this, is not conspiracy theory stuff. This is all on the record. Hunter Biden actually sued the storekeeper who made the laptop public. So that's to tie that laptop up in legalese to try and avoid any future criminal actions and criminal activities. This has been planned by the establishment, for want of a better word. This has been planned in DNC circles for months, that they were going to use the system and abuse of power against Donald Trump. And so exactly right, things like Hunter Biden's laptop, they've already stitched that up so it can't be used as easily in a criminal prosecution. But you've got a lot of active Trump-supporting attorneys general around the country now, realizing that they're allowed now. This has set a legal precedent.
Yeah.
Executive privilege is out the window now. There's half a chance if this goes to the Supreme Court that you might actually be able to start prosecuting sitting presidents.
Yeah, that's not a good sea change at all, because I hear Georgia is also getting ready to try and prosecute Trump as well. I mean, it's clear, even for those who don't like Trump, that they're out to get him. They really are.
Trump is coming out the best from this. I mean, his poll ratings have gone up to 61% compared to DeSantis at 19%. There are rhinos and Republicans in name only. There are Democrats who are just stepping away from this because Alvin Bragg is the dog who caught the car. Okay, he has overstepped his reach, and his own supporters are standing back and kind of going, oh, okay, well, let's see how this plays out, because he is now very, very exposed and very vulnerable. People are starting, see, this is the problem. People are starting to look into Alvin Bragg now to see where they can prosecute him for his campaign funding. The whole thing is now going to be an acceptable abuse of power all over the states. This is in the next 6 months. You're not going to have Democrats thanking Alvin Bragg for his intervention like this. This is a complete nonsensical anti-politics, because I don't want Obama prosecuted for his overspend. I don't want Hillary Clinton prosecuted for that's all part of the back and forth of
it's turning into a can of worms, and they shouldn't have taken the lid off. Paul Duddridge, thank you very much. Always good to catch up. Thank you so much. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. That, of course, was Trump Watch. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. There's so much more to come in the next hour. Good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. On the way, we'll be speaking to a fabulous surprise mystery guest who has been part of a very successful band who won Eurovision. She was part of the band. They are, well, named after a drink. Who do you think they are? She's on the way next in Outside. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. A funeral has been held for two British Israeli sisters who were killed in an attack by Palestinians. Rina and Maya D, aged 15 and 20, were shot in their car near an Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank on Friday. Their mother remains in a critical condition. Conflict has flared up in the region over the rare crossover of Easter, Ramadan and Passover. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. That's the warning from NHS National Medical Director Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned with hospitals across England facing nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman-Bishkoff motorhome, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time that police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband, Peter Murrell. The leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, Douglas Ross, told us people need answers. The mother of Olivia Pratt-Corbell has told the Sunday Mirror the law should be changed to force all criminals to attend their sentencing. Cheryl Corbell has spoken out after her daughter's killer, Thomas Cashman, refused to appear in the dock as he was jailed for a minimum of 42 years. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab says he's planning to change the law. A new survey reveals more than 1 in 10 teachers have been physically assaulted by a student in the last year. A teachers' union says they've been kicked, bitten and punched by pupils, whilst more than 1 in 4 have faced verbal abuse from a parent or carer. The findings have been released during the union's annual conference in Glasgow. Today, members will vote on a motion which suggests assaults are seen as a normal part of teaching in too many schools. The government is expected to crack down on the illegal sale of e-cigarettes to children. The Department of Health and Social Care says an illicit vapes enforcement squad will be set up. They'll carry out test purchasing at shops and share intelligence with local authorities. The task forces will also have the power to remove illegal products from shops and at borders. Thousands of expectant mothers are set to receive a maternity allowance boost of 10.1%. The increase will see payments go up by £15.82 a week. It equates to around £617 over the 39 weeks that it can be claimed. The Department of Work and Pensions says the automatic increase will benefit around 40,000 parents this year. 4 people have been killed and several others injured in an avalanche on the French Alps. France's Interior Minister said the incident happened in the middle of the day on the Armancet Glacier. Rescue workers are continuing to search for further casualties. Up to 10 people are believed to be trapped under the rubble after 2 residential buildings collapsed in Marseille. France's Interior Minister says an explosion caused the incident, sparking a fire that complicated rescue efforts. 5 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Residents of 30 other buildings have also been evacuated. China's military has carried out simulated precision strikes on Taiwan. Chinese state TV claims forces continue to encircle the island as part of 3 days of military strikes focused on the disputed territory. Taiwan's defense ministry has reported multiple Air Force sorties and says it's monitoring China's missile forces. The island says it will not cause any conflicts, but that it will respond appropriately. And the King, Queen Consort and other senior royals have attended an Easter church service at Windsor Castle. It was held at St George's Chapel and was the first of Charles's reign. The occasion falls on the second anniversary of Prince Philip's death. Both he and the late Queen have been laid to rest in the grounds of the 15th century chapel. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. And today, I'm joined by a musician. He was a member of that band, the one that won Eurovision. It was fantastic in 1981, I remember it. And you guess who this is? Really? My camera never lights anymore, so there's nothing worth playing. I can't sing. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the junior doctors playing greedy? Health Secretary Steve Barclay has criticised the British Medical Association, that is the union for junior doctors, over its unrealistic pay demands, saying that as it's calling for 35%, it's ridiculous and it's hampering serious talks. So are they being too greedy? What do you think? You can email me gbviews at GBNews or tweet me at GBNews. So it's fast approaching 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. And now it's time for this week's Outside. And today I'm joined by a very talented musician. Now, she's most renowned for being a member of the British pop culture band Bucks Fizz. They won Eurovision in 1981. I remember watching it. I was not there, but I watched it and I loved it. I thought it was great when they took the skirts off and did the thing. She was named Miss Pearly when she was 17 and subsequently competed in Miss England. Away from her music career, she stood as a candidate in local elections for the Brexit Party in 2019. And she's also taken to the stage as the evil queen in Snow White, which must have been fun to play. I think I could play that role quite well. She shares her talent teaching dance and performance at a performing arts school in Kent. It's safe to say she is a pop icon. I can't believe she's here. Please welcome musician Jay Aston. Jay, welcome.
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
And you. You know Camera Never Lies.
Of course I do. I watched you win Eurovision. I watched the thing. I used to watch it all the time.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and for you to actually be here. So talk to me about you then. I mean, OK, so you've always been quite a theatrical person, really.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you what your life was like as you were growing up and how eventually you became to be part of Bucks Fizz.
Well, my parents were in showbiz. My dad was a comic. And he had a show called Comedy Bandbox. So he introduced talent of the day. The first person he introduced was Jimmy Tarbuck.
Oh, Jimmy Tarbuck, gosh.
And my mum was sort of a singer-dancer, and they do summer seasons and bit parts in movies and stuff. So my whole childhood was really showbiz. And my brother was in the original Oliver, so I used to watch him. He did a lot of TV sort of commercials and a couple of movies. So, yeah, my whole childhood was just showbiz family.
You were showbiz.
And my brother then went into, he represented the UK in Eurovision the year before with a band called Prima Donna. I think they came second or third. And so, you know, I was a singer and dancer and did a bit of acting. And I was actually going to move to Jersey and run a theatre school. And I got this call from my agent. She said, I'd like you to come and audition for this band. And I went, I'll do one last audition. And that was it.
And you got the gig.
We got the gig, and, you know, never think you're going to win Song for Europe, let alone Eurovision, or even have one or two hits after it. But, you know, last week we did our 42nd anniversary at the O2 at the Indigo, which was a huge success.
God, you don't think it was that long ago. All those years ago, I was just 10 and I was watching you guys.
Yes, I was only 12.
No, there you go. We're so young, Molly. We're so young.
I was a teenager, but, yeah, no, it's been an incredible journey. So.
And, of course, Cheryl Baker. Had you met before, or was it just the audition that you met and then eventually?
We met, but our paths had crossed. I did Miss England, which was It was just, I went in my local beauty competition. I was 17. And bizarrely, she was performing with Coco, which was the other band she performed in the Eurovision the previous year. So we had sort of met before. And, we all just auditioned. There was about 300 people auditioned, and we were just picked out. We all met in this lady, Nicola Martin's front room, and she said, you are Bucks Fizz, and we're going to put you in primary colours. And so it was just literally a manufactured thing, which in those days was quite unusual. Normally a band was, all mates together from school.
So, and the guys in the band as well, because it reminded, I think people sort of felt it was like ABBA, because there were two women and two guys, and you were sort of similar sort of feel. Was ABBA a band that you sort of liked in your childhood?
I remember watching them win, with Waterloo.
That's great.
And, I had this sort of pact with my brother when I was about 9. We both wanted to win Eurovision.
Wow.
Because Eurovision was huge then. I know it's had its dips ever since, and it's just great that it's coming back to the UK this year. But as kids, that was a big thing. I wanted to have a #1 record. I wanted to be in the Royal Command, and I wanted to win Eurovision. And I was 9. I was very
Did you do all of those? Did you do all those?
All of those.
All of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't done quite the other list yet, but there's always time.
And what was it like performing at Eurovision? I mean, I bet it must have been like, I can't believe that we've been chosen first of all by the British public, and then to actually go and perform.
It was amazing. It was very nerve-wracking. We didn't realise at the time we'd actually had some threats, because it was the IRA actually was a time of different world then, and so we were very separate from the rest of the contestants. But it was all exciting, and all we wanted to do was get on stage and sing our song, 3 Minutes to Change Your Life. Of course, the skirt ripping thing did really stick in people's brains, and I'm sure it's added to a couple of votes. We only won by a few votes, but thank goodness for the skirt rip.
And since that happened, it must have really catapulted you into a major celebrity. What was that like?
Well, amazing, really. I mean, normally, Eurovision is an enormous springboard, but we got lucky here, particularly, and sort of in Germany and Holland. So we travelled all over the world for the next 2 or 3 years. And it was just, sold millions of records. An incredible time, just sort of a dream time. And then we had this terrible coach crash.
I remember.
Which sort of
I was going to
changed
ask you about that, yeah.
And the whole dynamic just changed. And the fractures that were already appearing in the band, sort of more within the band, they really came to a head. And I left shortly after that. Mike Nolan was very badly injured in that.
Yeah. Take me back to that. What was the sort of story behind how that happened?
Well, we were on tour, and it was the second night of about a 36-day tour. It was in Newcastle. And we'd done our gig, and we were going back to the hotel. And I remember I'd just moved. I'd moved from the very front seat further back.
Wow.
And I saw my manager, and it was bizarre. I would say a tangerine saved my life. This fruit was rolling about, and I went to pick the fruit up and saw my manager, and I went, "Oh, can I have a word?" And that's when I heard, "We're going to hit that." And we hit this lorry, and there was roadworks that were very poorly marked. And so we hit this lorry, which had a load of steel on it. So it was like hitting a brick wall. And, it was terrible. It was dreadful. And Mike went through the front window, so did Cheryl. Cheryl broke her back. Mike had a huge blood clot develop on his brain. And it was like something had said, "No, you're going to stop. That's the end. There's another road here to go down." It was just
so you picked up, you went to find an orange, and you...
I went up the back.
Yeah.
Of the coach, and it was like its maiden voyage of this beautiful coach, and there was like a kitchen there, and the fruit was just rolling about. So if I hadn't sort of picked the fruit up, and then my manager was just here, and I went, "Oh, can I have a word?" And that's sort of when it happened. But it took me to a different place in the coach. Otherwise, where the main girder of the coach, it would have gone straight through me. So those split seconds, decisions change your life sometimes.
Wow, that's something, isn't it? You must have thought, wow, I'm meant to do something. Something special.
I was lucky, but it was very traumatic, and I couldn't really see how that we could go beyond that, and so I left about 6 months after.
And what about, was it Mike that got badly injured?
Very badly injured.
How is he now?
He's amazing now. I mean, it took him a very long time to come back to. He still has sort of medication, and he has he's poor vision on one side. But I mean, he's done incredibly well, and we still gig. We just have to be aware that he can't always see us.
Okay.
we're still more united today, I think, than we ever were.
Yeah. So you said it changed direction. What happened in that change of direction?
Well, I left the band, and then the band went through various different incarnations,
that's right.
groups.
Yeah.
There was David Van Day at one point. We were like, well, he's in another band, and then everyone goes, oh, David Van Day's in Button. No, they weren't. Well, he was for 5 minutes. But it got a bit political. And so we, as 3 original members, have lost the right to use the words Bucks Fizz. We have to be called the Fizz.
Oh, God.
Which doesn't sit very well with us. Bearing in mind, with trademarks, it's meant to be that you're passing off for something, and we lost that case.
So what happens? Does somebody else have it? Who's got it then?
Bobby, G's wife, who was 6 when we won Eurovision. She owns the trademark Bucks Fizz, and we can't use it.
She should give it back.
No, I don't think there's any intention.
She's not going to give it back. She's not going to give it back. So now, what are you up to? Because I know you're into fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed. I think it came from my dad, because my granddad was a weightlifter, a world champion weightlifter. So my dad was always into all that fitness stuff, and I trained and used to teach. So I've always kept fairly healthy.
What did you teach?
Well, fitness or dance.
Did you?
Yeah.
I used to teach Zumba.
Did you?
I teach Zumba.
You look very fit.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love it. I used to teach in lots of places all over where I live. But yeah.
Great. No, it's important, I think, to keep it all in the right place, because as we get older, it sort of moves about.
The skin gets loose. I thought to myself, I'm getting back fat. I thought, oh no, not back fat. God, what do you do for back fat? How do you get rid of that? So you've been touring now, sort of at the moment, because of course this year Eurovision is in this country.
Yeah.
Where have you been, and what songs are you performing?
Well, the week around Eurovision is crazy for us. We're doing lots of gigs and personal appearances. I think we're on the actual show for a brief moment. Can't say too much about that, but yeah, it's going to be a crazy week, and we're just really looking forward to it. We've also got gigs. If people are interested in coming to see us, they can always go on our website. But we do a lot of 80s festivals or 80s events all through the year, and we're very lucky that we are still recording, and we've been doing albums with Mike Stock of Stock Aitken and Waterman.
Really?
Now that we're on our 4th album. So there might be another one in the pipeline.
Is it? What's your favourite? What is your favourite Bucks Fizz song? I know what mine is, but what's yours?
Go on, what's yours?
It's the one I sang. My camera.
My camera.
So I put you in the picture and cut it down.
That's I do love that. It's quite a clever song. Probably The Land of Make Believe.
Oh, I love that as well. Oh, yeah, actually, that is my favourite. Run for the sun.
You know it.
One. Is it you're an outlaw once again? Time to change, Superman. You'll be with you what you can in the land of.
Brilliant.
I know that. I was a fan. Yeah, actually, that was my favourite. And the video was quite good as well. I remember you had a video, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I liked the video. So I think between those two. But yeah.
I think Land of Make Believe, it's just amazing. We go out and do our, these gigs, and everybody knows that song. And we just put the mic out. We don't have to sing, and they just know all the words.
Do that. I loved it. I'm like, we're paying you to do it.
No, it's brilliant.
But it must be amazing. Who wrote those? Did you write some of the songs? Or?
Mostly it was Andy Hill who wrote and produced most of our albums. So, yeah, we've been so lucky.
Yeah, it's such a great band.
At our tender age, still gigging.
Well, what's your website? So you can't have Bucks Fizz. It's not Bucks Fizz anymore.
We're the fizzofficial.com. Yeah, so there's everything on there. Gigs to find us in Liverpool, and more albums. With Everything Under the Sun is our most recent album, and we just did the Indigo last week at the O2, which was our big anniversary concert.
I love that. I'm going to go. I have to come and see you. Thank you very much, Jay. It's really lovely to meet you.
My pleasure.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That's Jay Aston. She's a musician from The Fizz. You've got to check her out on tour. They're fabulous, aren't they? In the day. They were back in the day. It was great, wasn't it? Well, listen, stay with us. This is GBNews. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. It's coming up to 20 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. On the way, the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are junior doctors just being plain greedy? Now, the doctors' strike, because they're set to have a devastating effect as patients with up to 250,000 operations and appointments being cancelled. A lot of people will be suffering as a result. The British Medical Association, that's the BMA, they're calling for a 35% pay rise. The Health Secretary says that that's really unrealistic. What do you think? I'll be asking, do you think they're being greedy? Get in touch.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm laughing because they're back. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV and on digital radio. It's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are the junior doctors being plain greedy? Health Secretary Steve Barclay has criticised the BMA. They are, of course, the representatives of the junior doctors. They are the union for their unrealistic pay demands and the claims that their militant stance is hampering serious talks. Now, the junior doctors who are staging a 4-day strike, if you didn't know, that starts on Tuesday. They want 35% pay rise, which is, in my view, ludicrous. It's impossible. We can't do that. And they say that they want to claim that they're 15 years because of their 15 years of below inflation wage rises. But, of course, we are in ridiculous inflation at the moment, so it seems a bit unfair. But the strikes are set to have devastating consequences for patients, with up to 250,000 operations and appointments expected to be postponed as a result. So what do you think for the Great British Debate this hour? I'm asking, are the junior doctors just being plain greedy? So joining me now, I've got, what's going on? Yes, Stephen Pound, former Labour MP, Julia Taylor, psychiatric nurse, Benedict Spence, political commentator. So I'm going to start with you, Julia. I want to start with you because, of course, you are within the NHS. What is your thoughts on this 35%? Whilst we understand that there are issues, 35% is incredibly high and somewhat unrealistic. What's your view?
It does sound quite high and it probably is unrealistic on the face of it. But what you've got to think is that the junior doctors that are working now, you're saying there's going to be 250,000 people not seen and there's going to be no operations done, etc. That's what it's like now. And we're trying to solve that, us nurses as well, and the doctors. I do support the strike. I do think that amount is a bit much, to be fair. And it does sound like they're greedy. But nobody's staying in the NHS when they've qualified. They're all going abroad or they're going in the private sector. And what's happened is we've now got a lot of doctors that are junior, and all the experienced ones, or most of them, have gone to work in Australia and Canada where they get better conditions. They have lost 15% in real terms over, is it 15%? I think it might even be 26% in the last 15 years. And I heard you earlier saying that it's not just Conservatives that have done this, and you're sick of people saying that. I am too, because this has been a process that's gone on for 30 years, and in the last 30 years, that's when the NHS started to get to the stage that it's at now. It feels like it's been like a long-term goal by all parties to ruin it, because when they've ruined it, they've got to say, oh, well, look, it's in this mess now. Now we need it to go private and there's nothing we can do. And I also think that the nurses and doctors are going to get the blame for it happening when that happens, which is sad.
Yeah.
But I do support them because they have lost a lot of pay, and it's not attracting. It's not all about pay. It's not attracting people into the profession. And sadly, what we're getting now, not that I mind, is people from other countries coming over and doing their training, then going back to their own country with that skill, with that knowledge. And we've just got a lot of doctors here who are quite inexperienced, and all the good ones have gone. How's that going to make the NHS work? We need to improve their pay and conditions. And the only way we can do that, I do honestly think it goes back to the basics. When they're doing their training, if they stay in the NHS for 7 years when they've qualified, we will pay for that training. That's what they need to do, at the very least.
Well, I noticed that Benedict is nodding his head. Benedict, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that, actually. I think it would be a very good way of persuading a lot of people who want to pursue a career in the NHS to hang about. If you said, well, look, you're not going to have the crippling student loan debts that lots of people do have increasingly in this country. Another way that we could improve the situation is by opening up the spaces available to people who want to train to be doctors and nurses on the NHS. We have a limit on that, and that is contributing to the shortfall. But I do think that doctors, junior doctors, are being greedy, and I think that's a good thing, because I think that we view doctors, healthcare professionals in this country, as if they are sort of Florence Nightingale saints. And on the one hand, they can do no wrong, but on the other hand, we therefore expect them to sort of live a slightly penitent, poverty-stricken lifestyle, that they will just do things out of the goodness of their heart. They won't. People don't really tend to actually go into the medical profession because they just want to help people. They go into it because it's supposed to be a solid, well-paid job that sets you up for life at a comfortable middle-class level. I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that, and actually that we should reward people who go into it with proper pay, proper conditions. The issue that we have, I'm afraid, is that if we are competing with Canada, Australia, New Zealand, those countries aren't going to change the way that they fund their healthcare systems just because we turn around and go, oh, it's not fair, you're stealing our doctors. We need to find a way of being more competitive. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we increase taxes, or that we increase borrowing to pay for these increases in wages? Because, I agree with you, Nana. I think that it's unrealistic to expect a 35% pay increase in such a short period of time, although I would agree that they do deserve an increase. So what they should be doing is not asking for a 35% increase. They should be saying, how are we going to fund our wages going forward? Does the current system work? Does the public want that current system? Because I think if you turn around to the general public and say, look, junior doctors want 35% increase to maintain the current standards, which we all agree aren't good enough, most people would say, well, that sounds like a bad deal. So I think actually what we need to be doing is saying, how is it that Australia and Canada and New Zealand, countries that are not larger economies than ours, are able to fund their doctors, their healthcare systems better and provide better care? I'm afraid the clue is because they are, at least in part, due to insurance-based systems where people who are wealthier or who live slightly less healthy lifestyles pay more. And I'm afraid that's the future, especially in a country such as ours, an aging economy. More people out of earning brackets are going to be relying more on the healthcare service. We're going to need to find a way to pay for that. And the answer is not to just go, yes, we need more of the same system that isn't currently working. It is to find a way of modernizing the system. And it has taken us far too long to get to this point, so much so that we are now effectively in an NHS crisis that is never ending.
Stephen Pound.
Yeah, I think that we all agree that 35% is over the top. But listen, that is only a tiny part of the problem. The dirty little secret of the NHS is almost since the NHS started in July 48, we've been dragging people in particularly from South Asia. And I remember the Secretary of State for Health in 1963 was a man called Enoch Powell. And he spent all his time going around the West Indies begging nurses and doctors to come over here, particularly nurses. We've been actually taking doctors, particularly from South Asia, to such a degree that we're actually impoverishing their own health provision. And that is wrong at every level. Now, the difficulty we have here is that when you're a qualified doctor or a consultant, particularly if you're in one of the specialist fields like plastic surgery, trauma surgery, orthopedics, you're going to be earning about 200,000. You're going to get a lot of money of a mixture. As the founder of the NHS said, he had to allow doctors to have private practice. He was going to choke their mouths with gold. But the problem is there's only about 46 medical schools in the whole of the UK. It's about 36, 35 in England. There's 5 new ones, admittedly, since in the last 3 or 4 years. But at the moment, you've got a 1 in 12 chance of getting in to one of the top medical schools. So what we need is more medical schools, and we need a bursary. Same way as we do for the nurses. When my wife trained as a nurse, she got a bursary. When doctors train, they should get a bursary.
But you would think
maybe we'll golden handcuff them or not.
Perhaps.
But at the moment, we need more training and we need more local doctors. We stop stripping them.
But this 35%, see, now that's reasonable to me. If they said we want more bursaries, we want this, we want that, and a little bit of a pay rise, that would be more realistic to me, because I can see in a sustainable way where this could progress. But to ask for 35% with the state that it's in now, and to just create a situation where the backlog continues, and they're not even negotiating fairly, because they don't go to any talks or meetings properly to discuss this. But literally the first move was the nuclear option, which was the strike. And that, I think, is the issues that a lot of people have, Julie.
Well, I agree. When I was
can I get Julie to respond? It's all right, Julie.
Stephen Barclay didn't speak to them initially. He wouldn't speak to them, and it took him over a week to get in touch with them about it. He's quite nonchalant, and it's what he's doing isn't working. The NHS is broken, and we're really trying hard to keep it running, but we can't do it the way it's running now.
But isn't it the independent pay boards that decide how much the people within the NHS get paid? And so that's the first port of call. I mean, I thought that was how it worked.
Yeah, it is, but the Conservatives are running the independent pay board. They choose the people they want to run that. So how can that be said to be independent when really it's not? And it's just a whole mess. The nurses are on strike, the doctors are on strike, the junior doctors are on strike. It's not going to get fixed overnight either, and we are probably going to need help from the private sector.
Let's go to Stephen. Stephen.
Yeah, sorry, look, sorry.
You've got about 20 seconds, Stephen.
Me?
20 seconds. You've got about 20 seconds.
Okay, yeah.
Now it's
They're
10.
Not being greedy. They're being unrealistic on this, but there is only we're just scratching the surface of the problem. As has been said, the health service needs to be totally and utterly reevaluated from the ground up. And the doctors, they don't come in there because they're saints. They come in there because they do care for people, they do care for patients.
So finally, there's more than 20 seconds. So finally, are they being too greedy? Greedy or not greedy, Stephen? Greedy or not greedy?
Silly.
Greedy or not greedy?
They're silly.
No, it's greedy. Oh, for goodness sake, they never ever do.
Not greedy.
Not greedy. Julia, what do you think? Greedy or not greedy?
A little bit greedy.
Greedy. And Benedict, greedy or not greedy?
Greedy, but not in a smart way.
Greedy, but not in a smart way. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Benedict Spence, political commentator, Julia Taylor, psychiatric nurse, and also former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Well, if you just joined me, what are your thoughts? What do you think? This is GBNews. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British debate this hour. I'm asking, are the junior doctors being greedy? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 5:34 with the latest from the GB newsroom. A funeral has been held for two British-Israeli sisters who were killed in an attack by Palestinians. Rina and Maya D, aged 15 and 20, were shot in their car near an Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank on Friday. Their mother remains in a critical condition. Conflict has flared up in the region during the rare crossover of Easter, Ramadan and Passover. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors in England start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. That's the warning from NHS National Medical Director Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned with hospitals facing nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman-Bishkoff motorhome, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband Peter Murrell earlier this week. Up to 10 people are believed to be trapped under the rubble after 2 residential buildings collapsed in Marseille. French authorities say an explosion caused the incident, sparking a fire which complicated rescue efforts. 5 people have been taken to hospital with serious injuries. Residents of 30 other buildings have also been evacuated. 4 people have been killed and several others injured in an avalanche on the French Alps. France's Interior Minister said the incident happened in the middle of the day on the Armancet glacier. Rescue workers are continuing to search for other casualties. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Bethany. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. Stay with us here on GB News. Loads more still to come. The Great British Debate is on the way. I'm asking our junior doctors being greedy. And at 5:50, we'll be talking about the Sussexes potentially finding themselves in hot water again. That is according to a new explosive book that could be stripped. Could they be stripped of their titles? Back in a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 20 minutes to 6 o'clock. Cracky, Tempest viewed it. Time flies. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I've come dressed as an Easter egg. Back to the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, are the junior doctors being greedy? Health Secretary Steve Barclay has criticised the BMA, the British Medical Association, for its unrealistic pay demand and the militant stance that it's taking, which claims they're actually hampering serious talks rather than helping. The junior doctors are actually asking for 35% pay rise, which some may seem is ludicrous. I mean, that's what, a third? Imagine me asking for, like, can I have a third more money? Over a third. Try it. I don't think it's going to wash somehow. If they don't get it, they're going to stage a 4-day strike. Obviously, they were never going to get that. So they are now staging the strike that starts on Tuesday, and they're going to try and force the government's hand to the negotiating table. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the junior doctors being simply greedy? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. It's the other way around. Danny, you're first.
Hi.
An author and journalist,
Housewife. We agreed housewife.
No, Christine Hamilton. All right, so, Danny, are they being plain greedy?
Yes, and also they're being stupid about the way they're going about it. I've got an article here from the BMG, the British Medical Journal, and the BMA, which is their union, has asked the union members, what a loaded question. Are you prepared to work abroad if conditions and pay don't get better?
That's terrible.
Well, of course they're going to say yes. This is part of the blackmail and the leverage that they've got. Now, I really admire that mental health nurse, Julia. I think she talks a lot of sense, but I think that she's getting too sucked in by this 4 out of 10 who want to work. Do you realise the upheaval of having to move to Australia or Canada or New Zealand? You've got friends, you've got family, maybe you've got kids at school, you've got a partner, you've got a wife, as if you're going to just...
I'll forget them, I would.
But 40%, it's just so unrealistic.
It's true.
And this is part of the rhetoric that they use in order to gain leverage. And also, just one other point, if I may, you know, at the picket lines, and they say beep if you support the NHS. I'm sorry, but people are beeping and they're probably sticking 2 fingers up as well.
Please.
Oh, sorry, for television viewers, I beg your pardon. But people are fed up with them and they're not beeping for the right reasons.
That's what somebody did say. They drove past and they were beeping in
Of course,
anger.
yes. But the BMJ is so frequently, the BMA has so frequently been on the wrong side of the argument. They were against the setting up of the National Health Service in the first place. They didn't want it to happen because they were being protectionist. They thought their doctors would be better off because it's the doctors' trade union. But you're absolutely right. Of course, these people aren't all going to flood abroad. It's I mean, the weather might be better in Australia, but that's about all. The junior doctors are being, I think the big word is they're being unrealistic. There is no way on earth, and they know this, that the government can offer them 35% because we'd have this ridiculous leapfrogging. For every 1% of increase in the salary bill that the NHS has to fund, that costs them £1 billion a year.
Wow.
So 1% increase across the board is £1 billion. Now, where are we going to find these billions from? It cannot go on coming from the taxpayer. That is unrealistic. We've already got the highest tax rate for 70 years. It just, we've got to get different money into the health service. The whole thing's got to be reorganised, restructured. Bring back matron.
Well, but they would say that, they've seen the MPs on £86,000. The salaries have just gone up a further a couple of grand, and they're even saying that it might not be enough money. I mean, come on. Listen, you got 86 grand, you know how much you're getting for the job. They would say that, look, how come you can pay these politicians all this money and all the money that was wasted over COVID, which is true.
Well,
I mean, and then it turns out that a lot of this money went to people who knew members of the Conservative Party. I mean, with the PPE and stuff like that, Michelle Mone. So, there's all these things actually going on.
No,
these people will be looking at that and saying, well, we've had enough.
No, I quite agree. Those are all justifiable grievances. I mean, the MPs, I think they have had 30% over the last, whatever it is, 5 or 6 years.
No, they haven't had 30% over the last 5 years.
Well, it goes over up.
Years, whatever.
It goes up a certain, what is it, 2% or 3%?
Whatever, but they've had a good... But, as a senior consultant, which a lot of these junior doctors will end up being, earns vastly more than an MP. Exactly. They can earn 150, 200,000 a year.
Militancy at the moment is in a rich vein of form. The unions are riding the crest of a very successful wave at the moment.
Your friend Mick Lynch.
Mickey Lynch, my pal.
Your twin. Your thinner twin.
My thinner twin.
No,
and they've twigged onto the fact that there are settlements to be had. Like, currently the nurses' settlement, there are negotiations and I think an agreement is there or thereabouts or is currently in place. So now the junior doctors want a bit of this. They want a taste of all of this. And
if they get it, everyone else will be leapfrogging over there.
Yeah, the teachers. Every public servant will want it.
But that's what I think I said earlier, that these strikes are very politicised. And the fact that they were all happening together whenever it was. Was it a month ago? We had rail, we had everybody going on strike and everyone else.
It's completely synchronised.
It's not a coincidence.
No, of course it's not. Although I disagree with the pair of you about MP's salary. I think they should be on a lot more dough.
No, they shouldn't.
That's another...
we disagree.
Remember the
story.
86,000 is just the basic. And they also get, like, second home allowance, and they also get lots of other things.
That's the expenses.
Yeah, but they get second home allowance, and,
that's their expenses.
Well, they have to live in two places.
They can't
the vast majority.
Yeah, but you're still getting that, right? They're still getting that. Some people might have to commute in and back or stay at a place and pay for it out of their own money. So they get that, plus they get other things other benefits as well. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, the amount of money they actually
I think it's dangerous, though, when they start saying...
But that's what people are looking at. See, that
you can't compare. It's incomparable.
No.
A doctor and an MP.
But that's what they're looking at, and I think it is comparable.
Well, I don't think they shouldn't be looking at MPs because that's a tiny number of people.
But that's one of the elements. I also mentioned the money wasted over COVID as well.
Well, and the other thing that the junior doctors get is massive salary, pension arrangements, which people in the private sector can only dream of. And although you may not think that's terribly important when you're 25 or 30 and you're on the bottom rung and you're only getting 40, 50,000 a year, in fact, when you get to my sort of age, you realise how important a pension is and you will wish that you'd put a bit more aside. And we, the taxpayer, is doing it for these doctors.
I think perhaps the government, if they agree to pay settlements, should then come up with notions that if you're going to do this, then you have to forego certain strike, you can't strike, and we'll agree to certain increases every year, as they sort of do anyway. But I don't think they should be allowed to strike. I don't think they do. But the other element is I think it should be chipped away at their pension as well.
That's not a pay rise then, is it?
Well, that's irrelevant because they're getting an instant pay rise, which is what they're wanting for inflation. So then I think their pension should also be dealt with as well. You can't just have double. They're having their pensions are being doubled, literally. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I find it absolutely astonishing that anybody in the health service, anyone who goes into it offering healthcare, would even consider going on strike. I really do.
Apparently, the strikes are going to put healthcare back 11 days.
Of course it will. Of course it will.
These 4 days will mean that my 89-year-old beloved father cracked his head open at home and an ambulance came and he was taken to Warwick Hospital and he's got nothing but praise for the whole of the NHS. But thank God my 89-year-old father didn't crack his head open when there was a paramedic strike or a doctor's strike.
Yes, well, please don't crack your head open at all, especially not in the next 5 days, because this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics I'm discussing. 2 of you today, because a lot of you are eating Easter eggs. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Seshni, in Milton Keynes. What do you think? You're a doctor.
Good afternoon, Nana. Yes, a very interesting discussion. I don't think the doctors are being greedy. I think they're asking for a third on top of their salary because doctors work long hours. A lot of the junior doctors, Nana, and everyone that's listening, doctors have to pay back their loans, which they've studied for 5 years. And on a junior doctor's salary, with the cost of a living crisis and inflation, I think they need this increase. And I don't think doctors would be going on strike and also asking for a third if they didn't think that it was realistic.
Well, I don't know. I mean, 35%. I mean, if you went to your boss and said, can I have an extra over a third, I think most of them would tell you where to go. Just out of my thoughts. But I suspect most people couldn't afford it either. Brian Dugan, what do you think? You're there in Solihull.
Well, I agree with Seshni largely. I think that, however, angry we may be about the fact that people who are providing healthcare will be going on strike, and we don't want that, of course. We have to look then, well, the conditions must not be right, and the conditions within the parameters and within the strains and within the unprecedented record levels of waiting lists and all the rest of the A&E that they had over the winter. And junior doctors and healthcare staff and personnel in general are having to deal with all that. And I think that, the fact that nurses have been on strike, the fact that physiotherapists have been on strike, the fact that paramedics have been on strike, the fact that
everyone's been on strike.
We're looking at this. I think we have to see it in totality, and there are clearly issues, and there are larger issues, and they need to be addressed.
Okay, so are they greedy then, yes or no? Greedy or not greedy? Brian, greedy or not greedy? Quickly.
I would say it's not realistic.
No, greedy or not greedy? No. Greedy or not greedy? Are they being greedy or not greedy?
No, not greedy.
Okay, and Seshni, greedy or not greedy?
Not greedy.
All right, thank you so much. That's Seshni in Milton Keynes and Friday. Thank you so much. Right, another story that caught my eye today. Stripping Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their titles at last. It's being discussed at the highest level. That's according to an explosive new book. Buckingham Palace officials are claimed to have held talks on whether to take away the couple's titles as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, although they then become Prince and Prince, which is not great, but you can take those away as well. That's following a serious public attack from the to the royal family, on the royal family from them. And that's according to a book by veteran royal writer Robert Jobson. Despite pressure from his aides, King Charles is eager not to antagonise his son, though. So should they lose their titles? Let's see what my panel, Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly, make of that. Christine?
Yes.
Take the titles away.
Absolutely. I've had enough
Prince
of those
Harry
two.
and Prince...
Well, whatever, but I would, if you could strip the HRH, I definitely would. They, honestly, they just don't deserve them any longer.
Danny?
Does the HRH monetise them in any way?
Yes.
Do they?
But it's not HRH, it's the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Take the lot.
The Sussex doesn't...
so the Duke will go, maybe, the title. And is that monetised?
Well, they monetise it.
All of it.
The whole way they make their living is by monetising their connection with the royal
I'm going to say
family.
no. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they should keep them.
Why?
Because I think deep down they're decent people and they're constantly under attack.
You, Mr. Kelly, are just being provocative.
He's trying to play devil's advocate.
You do not. I don't believe you think that.
That's my opinion.
He's playing devil's advocate.
It's gone from strip them to, no, they're nice people within a sentence.
Yeah, you don't mean that. But anyway, what do you think?
And the way they're behaving over the coronation is appalling. If you're asked to RSVP by a certain date, you do it.
Bad manners, bad manners.
Appalling.
I think it's unanimous. Strip them of the titles. Danny is just acting. Now it's time for Supplement Sunny. He's not a very good one either. My panel and I would like to discuss some of the news stories that caught their eye. So let's see. Who wants to go first? Let's go to Danny, your supplement. It's about ULEZ.
Yeah, ULEZ. So unpopular. I was recently stung with a £60 fine for driving in Birmingham. This goes back to July. And they've only just caught up with me. £60 fine, and it's just so deeply unpopular, so deeply unfair. And Mayor Khan, and he's been voted in twice, so he's popular. He's now extending it. Anyway, London boroughs could be given a Brexit-style in or out referendum vote over ULEZ. Tory London mayoral hopeful vows to let voters decide whether to keep the popular or unpopular ULEZ, depending on your point of view. So you could go around certain boroughs in polluting vehicles, quote-unquote, and not get stung. And it's going to be like a referendum. And I guarantee you, this is just me being a man of the people, knowing that people at home are men and women of the people themselves. They will overwhelmingly, if they drive a car, they will vote no. We don't want ULEZ.
Of course, nobody wants ULEZ. What is...
Well, nobody's going to vote for more taxes on them, are they? But no, you're right. Of course they won't. Well, what I'm absolutely delighted about is a victory for common sense, which is Kemi Badenoch has now said that there is no way the government is going to give the government time for this worker protection bill, which would have made employers liable for staff being offended in that. So if somebody was in a pub and somebody made an offensive remark, a remark that they thought was offensive, they could then seek damages from the pub landlord. I mean, it's utterly crazy.
Hallelujah.
It was a Lib Dem private member's bill. Which,
Lib Dem.
Of course. It should have been knocked on the head on the Friday. All the government had to do was make sure there was one MP there to say, I object. And it would have been... Anyway, they've woken up, hooray.
Thank God for that.
Knocked on the head now.
This is just to show how they're sleeping at the wheel, which is very unfortunate.
Finally,
though, my supplement, the government are aiming to lay out their plans to make it more difficult for under-18s to purchase e-cigarettes, which I think are awful. The NHS data shows that 1 in 10 secondary school pupils are regular vapers, so a lot of concern about health. What do you think about these, Christine and Danny?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, they are better for you than real cigarettes, but they are...
So far as we know.
Apparently. But they are possibly the gateway to real cigarettes. So I think it's...
I used to smoke. I live on a road where there are 2 schools, and all you see at 3:30, you can hardly see the kids because there's plumes of vape.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
I don't like it. I hate it. I don't see the point of it, frankly. But on today's show, I've been asking, should diversity and inclusion be a priority for the King's coronation? According to our Twitter poll, 26% of you say yes, 74% of you say no. I agree with you, totally right. Thank you so much to my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you very much.
My pleasure, as always.
And Danny Kelly, thank you so much to you as well.
Thank you, young lady.
And happy Easter to everybody.
See you next Sunday.
Yes, listen, we'll see
Happy
you
Easter.
all on Friday, Saturday even. And thank you so much to you for your company as well. I'll be back next Saturday at the time of 3 o'clock. Have a fantastic week and happy Easter.
Hello there, very good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. We're seeing a change to something more unsettled as we head throughout tonight and over the next few days. As high pressure drifts its way off, it's allowing these weather fronts to start pushing in from the Atlantic and bring us these spells of rain and showers. The isobars also squeezing together a bit more, so we will certainly see a windy night to come, particularly around coastal areas of Scotland where there is the risk of some gales. The rain moving from Northern Ireland into Western Scotland, where it could be heavy for a time. Generally across England and Wales, the rain will come and go and will be a bit patchier through the night. Some clearer spells for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland later on, but that will allow temperatures to just drop off a bit more here. Elsewhere, underneath the cloud, it's going to be a mild night. We won't see much lower than 9 or 10 degrees Celsius. Means it also will be a cloudy start to Easter Monday, the rain lingering across the southeast until the afternoon, really, and also across Shetland. Behind that, we will see some sunny spells, but quite frequent showers moving in as well. These could be heavy in places with the risk of some hail and thunder. Temperatures slightly down compared to Sunday, still around average for the time of year, but there will be that fresh breeze in place as well. Showers continuing into the evening, particularly the northern half of the UK and over the higher ground of Scotland. They could be wintry for a time. Into the early hours of Tuesday, the showers will tend to die their way off a bit more. There'll still be a scattering in place as we start off the day. Generally, some clearer spells to begin with, but we're then watching this rain as it starts pushing in from the southwest. We'll move into southwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland for the afternoon as well. Turning quite damp and wet here, but it's also going to be accompanied by a squeeze in those isobars, and that is what could bring some quite disruptive winds to western areas of the UK. So we do have yellow weather warnings in force for Tuesday night into Wednesday for that possible disruption. Otherwise, it's looked to stay showery as we move into the second half of the week as well.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.